Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Janet Abaroa. For many people, family is the most important aspect of life. However, it can be very challenging to find a partner who will be a supportive and ideal husband and father. Unfortunately, love can sometimes cloud judgment, leading to relationships with people who are far from perfect and may even become a source of distress. Janet Abaroa was born on June 19, 1979, in a small town in Virginia. She was the seventh child in a large family that practiced the Mormon faith, which played a significant role in their lives from a young age. Janet was strong, independent, friendly, and intelligent. She had a deep love for children and always dreamed of becoming a mother. In high school, she played football and basketball and participated in swimming. During college, she continued to play sports for local teams, especially representing the University of Southern Virginia. In 1998, at a college game, Janet met a young football player named Raven, who played for the Southern Virginia men's team. Their relationship quickly turned into a love affair. Although Janet was friendly and outgoing, she was careful to adhere to her religious beliefs and kept her distance. Their relationship lasted for 2 years until Raven proposed to Janet. At the time, Janet was 20 years old and Raven was a year younger. They married in August 2000. To become financially independent, they both took jobs as sales associates at a sporting goods store, which required them to relocate to Durham, North Carolina. The couple rented a house in the suburbs and started their new jobs right away. From the outside, they appeared to have a happy marriage, and friends and neighbors often regarded them as the perfect couple. However, like many relationships, much of their happiness was for show. The couple quickly started facing issues. Janet often told her family and friends that she suspected Raven was cheating on her with various women. At one point, she left their home for a few days but eventually returned. This situation was very challenging for Janet, as she had always dreamed of a strong, loving family and valued loyalty. She felt devastated because she truly loved her husband and did not want to end their relationship. Compounding her difficulties, Janet discovered she was pregnant shortly after Raven admitted to cheating. Although she had always wanted a large family and was excited about the news, Raven's betrayal left her feeling overwhelmed and scared. She did not want to be a single mother. During her pregnancy, Janet grew close to her neighbors and made several friends among them. These friends even spoke to her husband, Raven, urging him to stop cheating on his pregnant wife. It seemed their words had an impact, as he promised to be a better husband. However, Janet remained unsure of the sincerity of his promises, given his history of deceit. Despite her concerns, life appeared to return to normal, especially after the birth of their son, Caden, on October 17, 2004. He became the center of Janet's world. The young family was struggling financially during a crisis. Janet, the mother, had stopped earning an income, leaving Raven as the only provider. However, his salary as a seller was not enough to support 3 people. Their landlord recognized their difficulties and agreed to postpone their rent for 3 months, understanding that the baby would add to their expenses. Despite this support, the couple still faced financial challenges, prompting them to seek assistance from the local church, which helped them in December 2004. The situation took a turn for the worse when their son was just 2 months old. Raven was arrested for stealing merchandise from the sporting goods store where he and Janet worked. He had stolen several tracksuits and sold them online, resulting in over $9,000 in losses for the store. As a consequence, Raven was fired, and overwhelmed by the shame of her husband's actions, Janet also decided to quit her job. Fortunately, Raven did not go to prison, but he was required to pay $10,000 in restitution to the store and received a 2-year probation sentence. Afterwards, Janet and Raven were both unemployed. They struggled financially. With a criminal record, Raven was unable to find regular work, but despite these challenges, the young family managed to make ends meet by working part-time. Janet's family received support from relatives while still holding down her part-time job. A few months later, they were faced with a devastating tragedy. On April 26, 2005, Janet picked up her son Caden from daycare to prepare dinner. That evening, her husband came home, they had dinner together, and after Janet and Caden fell asleep, he went to Mauriceville to attend a local mini-soccer game. When he returned home, he witnessed a horrifying scene. Janet was lying on the floor in a pool of blood. Nearby, Caden was lying in his crib, fortunately, was not injured. In shock, Raven immediately called the police. Reporting that his wife had been attacked and covered in blood, although he could not understand the extent of her injuries. He initially thought she had been shot. When paramedics arrived, they discovered that Janet had not been shot, but had been stabbed multiple times. She died instantly from a wound to her neck. Janet was murdered in a rented house in Gifts. Shockingly, she was pregnant and her unborn child was also killed. The police were horrified by the severity of the murder and needed to find out who could have committed such an act. After examining the crime scene, Janet's body was sent to the forensic laboratory. The autopsy revealed 3 deep stab wounds, one on her left hand, indicating that she had tried to defend herself. The fatal wound was to the neck, where the attacker had severed an artery, causing severe blood loss. With such injuries, Janet would have died within minutes. In addition, experts were unable to determine the exact time of death. At the crime scene, forensic scientists gathered a significant amount of evidence from the victim's body, which required thorough examination. Meanwhile, the police sought witnesses who might identify the likely perpetrator. Naturally, police first interviewed her husband, Raven Abaroa. He was called in for questioning multiple times. His statements helped piece together some of the events leading up to the brutal murder. He reported that on April 26, 2005, he left for Mauriceville to play a mini-football match and returned home at 10:40 p.m. When he called for his wife, she did not respond, so he went to the top floor room. There, he found her murdered. Since Raven was away, it was difficult to determine when Janet was killed. The police began investigating potential suspects based on Raven's perspective. He theorized that he believed his wife may have chosen to end her life due to financial difficulties. Raven said that sometime before her death, Janet began to behave strangely. However, Janet's family and friends dismissed this idea. They knew her well and had never heard her express such thoughts. Furthermore, Janet was very religious and would never have considered such an act. At this point, police believed that Janet's death was not voluntary. The injuries she suffered could not have been self-inflicted. Additionally, there were clear signs that someone else was in the house at the time of the attack. A bloody shoe print and a single fingerprint were found near the body. The lack of broken windows or doors suggested that the victim had voluntarily allowed the attacker into the house. There were no signs of a struggle, except for defensive wounds on Janet's arm, suggesting that she had attempted to defend herself from a blow. The attack appeared sudden, especially since Raven said that Janet was asleep when he left. It was also unusual that nothing was stolen from the house except Raven's laptop and a few kitchen knives, which may have been used in the attack. The assassin did not take any other valuables, such as rings, jewelry, or expensive items. Therefore, it does not appear to have been a robbery. At that time, there was no solid evidence against the Raven, so he was released, although police started to investigate him more thoroughly. Following the incident, Raven's behavior became increasingly suspicious. Just a day later, he packed his belongings, took his son, and moved to Utah. This reaction seems understandable, as not every husband can stay in a house where such a violent murder took place. He needed the support of his loved ones, which is why he went to where his family lived. Raven's friends later commented that he did not act like someone who had lost a loved one. He did not seem to care about what had happened to his wife or who was responsible. Raven clearly had no intention of helping find the criminal or bring justice. He did not participate in distributing or preparing the reward notice or any other action taken by the police or the family. Instead, Raven simply left with the child and refused to cooperate further. The police observed that Raven was reluctant to cooperate at first and eventually ignored all requests. While Janet's family devoted all their free time to assisting the police. The police became suspicious when they discovered that shortly before the crime, Raven took out a $500,000 life insurance policy for Janet after her second pregnancy had begun. This was unusual because the family was facing significant financial difficulties and had never purchased such insurance before. Despite lacking funds for essential expenses, Raven managed to pay for the insurance premiums. Furthermore, the Raven contacted the insurance company to claim the payout soon after the attack, even before Janet was buried. All of this raised red flags, and suspicion mounted around the Raven. Police tried to get to know Raven and quickly realized that he had been dishonest from the beginning of his relationship with Janet. He claimed to be a devout Mormon and even said that he had been on a mission to Peru. This story was false. At the time, Raven lived in Salt Lake City, Utah, where he lived a quiet life after receiving his insurance money. During this time, he met Vanessa Pont, a single mother who lived nearby. They soon began dating. Raven was not like other men. His friendly demeanor set him special. He knows how to attract attention, quickly winning Vanessa over with his lies. He gains her trust by claiming that his wife died in a car accident. At the time, Raven is unaware that Janet's family is watching his every move. They discover his suspicious actions and are determined to find out what he will do next, hoping to gather evidence of his involvement in Janet's death. Janet's family quickly discovers that he lied about her death. But why would he tell almost everyone that his wife died in an accident? At first, Vanessa trusts him completely and doesn't want to know the details of Janet's fate. However, her curiosity eventually leads her to the truth. Janet was the victim of an unsolved murder, dead from 3 stab wounds. Despite this, Raven manages to fool the Vanessa. He repeatedly complains to her about the police and the public's obsession with blaming him for Janet's death, claiming he had nothing to do with it and that a robber killed his wife. Surprisingly, she believes him. Meanwhile, Janet's family contacts Vanessa, his fiancée. They warn her that Raven can be dangerous and advise her to stay away from him, but she ignores their concerns. She is charmed by him and puts her trust in him. After 3 years together, Vanessa and Raven married. Vanessa experienced Raven's mood swings and frequent tantrums, during which he lost control. His violent behavior left her in fear for her life. Their marriage ended abruptly, lasting only 4 months. As the pressure from the police continued, Raven decided to speak to the press. He expressed hope that the case would be solved and the killer found, so he could be left alone. At the same time, he completely denied any involvement in the crime. During this time, a new police took over the case, determined to ensure justice for the Janet's murder. Janet's family actively supported the police and cooperated with the investigation. In this context, Vanessa's anxiety increased. She frequently questioned whether her husband could have killed his first wife, leading her to doubt his honesty. Vanessa believed he was capable of such a terrible act. Subsequently, she spoke to the media, where she revealed that her ex-husband often acted inappropriately. She recalled the worst moment in their relationship occurring on Christmas 2018. During a dispute that Raven instigated, he locked Vanessa in the bathroom and expressed his desire to hit her, stating he hated her and wouldn't care if she died. This incident marked a turning point that led to their breakup. Vanessa admitted she was very afraid of Raven and believed he would easily harm her, just as he likely did with his ex-wife. The new police believe that Raven is responsible for this crime. The main challenge is Raven's alibi for the night of the murder. Around the time Janet was attacked, he was at the stadium playing mini soccer, and several witnesses have confirmed this. Furthermore, shoe prints found at the scene do not match Raven's shoes, and bloody fingerprints on the door do not belong to Raven. However, there is something troubling about his behavior. The police called Raven to ask him a few questions over the phone. Raven repeated his story, but he did not remember many details. This raised suspicions. Raven claimed the knife had gone missing from his home on the night of the attack, discovered during a move. He said that the police did not find the knives because they did not conduct a thorough investigation, which made him doubt their ability to catch the criminal. Meanwhile, the police believed that they had not missed anything, because forensic experts had spent a lot of time carefully examining the crime scene. For years, the investigation was unsuccessful. However, circumstantial evidence pointed to Raven as a suspect. Police spoke with Raven's former girlfriends, all of whom described him as very aggressive and prone to violence. Police also discovered that, on the evening of the attack, Raven locked his dog in the garage, something he had never done before. Police believed this action was significant, thinking that Raven may have feared that the dog would protect Janet and prevent him from committing the crime or attract attention to the house by barking. Police discovered that the day before the crime, the Raven transferred data from his laptop to another storage device. This raised suspicions of premeditated murder since the laptop was reportedly stolen. On February 1, 2010, based on this circumstantial evidence, the Raven Abaroa was arrested on suspicion of first-degree murder and extradited to North Carolina. However, the evidence against him was insufficient, being entirely circumstantial, so police continued to gather more evidence for the trial. When the police arrived at the crime scene, they thoroughly examined the photos and the victim's body. The police noticed an open, empty contact lens case on the table next to the bed. This suggested that the Janet might have been wearing her lenses at the time of the crime. However, her parents insisted that she never went to bed with her lenses in. She always removed them before sleeping. This begs the question, was Janet killed before she went to bed and before he left? The forensic expert who conducted the autopsy overlooked whether the Janet was wearing contact lenses, but this was not intentional. Forensic scientists sometimes miss certain details because they seem irrelevant to the case. In this instance, however, the presence or absence of contact lenses could have been crucial evidence against Raven's falsehood. To verify this theory, exhuming the body became necessary. Janet's family supported the idea of exhumation, as they were determined to prove the criminal's guilt and seek justice for their loved one. In July 2010, the body was exhumed, and forensic experts discovered remnants of contact lenses in the eye, although the material was dry and disfigured. However, to convince the jury, a formal examination was needed. It was necessary to verify that the contact lens actually belonged to the Janet. To achieve this, a comprehensive study was conducted over the course of a year. Specialists used pig eyes fitted with contact lenses and subjected them to an embalming process similar to that used on human bodies before burial. The results of the experiments supported the initial hypotheses, confirming that at the time of the murder, Janet was indeed wearing contact lenses, indicating she had not gone to bed. This evidence contradicted the Raven claims. Raven Abaroa's trial began in 2013 and attracted considerable public attention, receiving extensive media coverage. Many people attended the trial. The jury was given detailed information about the facts of the case. Before the trial began, the prosecutor's office stated that they believed Raven was definitely guilty, although there was no direct evidence linking him to the crime. The case was brought to the Supreme Court based largely on circumstantial evidence. However, there was a large body of material that should have convinced a jury of Raven's guilt. Friends and family of Janet said that just a month before her death, she had expressed concerns about her husband. She mentioned that he had serious anger issues and often lost his temper and control. Janet repeatedly expressed her fear of Raven and said she intended to leave him. Janet's mother said she often witnessed heated arguments between the couple. In interviews with police, Raven admitted to having numerous arguments with his wife but adamantly denied any wrongdoing. During the trial, the defense pointed out to the jury that police initially focused on evidence pointing to Raven's guilt, ignoring other potential suspects, and ignored several pieces of evidence. First, a pair of footprints were found at the crime scene that did not belong to Raven. Second, a bloodstain was found on the front door, the DNA of which also did not match Raven. The third important clue that was overlooked was a shoe print that the criminal would have left when he stepped in Janet's blood near the body. The prosecution then relied on the fact that Raven was manipulative, prone to violence, and subject to sudden mood swings. One of Raven's girlfriends expressed her concerns about Raven's potential mental health issues. It was clear that he was cruel and manipulative by nature, frequently communicating with other girls behind the scenes. This behavior suggested that he may have planned the murder carefully and may have misled the police. The lover then recounted an incident where Raven forced her to have sex in a car parked on the side of the road. He acted so aggressively that she had no choice but to comply. She even deliberately left a strand of her hair in the car as evidence in case anything happened to her. One possible motive for the murder, according to the prosecutor, was Janet's unexpected pregnancy. She had only shared this news with a few close people, including some of her sisters. While Janet was excited about becoming a mother, she did not view her husband as the ideal father for the child. Given their challenging financial situation, the prosecution suggested that this news could have provoked anger in Raven. During the investigation, a clear lie from the Raven emerged. Raven maintained that he found his wife dead when he spoke to the police. However, during a confession at a local church, he revealed that when he found her, she was still alive and even attempted to speak to him before losing dying. Police suspected that Janet was involved in a relationship with another man. She intended to leave her husband and had begun communicating with her ex-boyfriend, Scott. However, their messages suggested that they had only recently started talking and that there was no romantic relationship between them. In March 2014, Raven entered into a plea agreement with the prosecution and pleaded guilty to manslaughter for killing his wife. As a result, he received a 10-year prison sentence, with the possibility of parole after 8 years. Custody of their son was given to Janet's family. Raven was released from prison on Christmas Day 2017. He returned to Utah and still lives there to this day. Janet's family was outraged by the sentence, as Janet can never return, while her husband continues to live his life. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Sabrina Kudder. Sabrina Kudder was born on December 5, 1982, in a suburb of London. She is of French and Algerian descent from her parents. The combination leads to her exceptionalism. The eldest of 4 children, her family moved to Paris when she was 2 years old, and she grew up there. However, Sabrina's complex personality began to emerge when she went to school. Her former classmates described her as fierce, domineering, self-centered. Sabrina does not make friends easily, and she is especially unfriendly to other smart and beautiful girls, as she sees them as competitors. With her beautiful looks and outstanding height, Sabrina could have pursued a modeling career if she had learned to be friendly with others. However, during her childhood and youth, she often wanted to use others instead of caring about their interests. Sabrina participated in sports and music as a child, but she did not strive and did not achieve success in these areas. While studying at school, Sabrina participated in sports and injured her back. Since then, she had to use prescription painkillers. However, she later tried to obtain painkillers illegally, which led to her arrest and warning. Sabrina focused a lot on herself and her appearance, always craving for attention. She believed that she would have a rich, glamorous, and famous future. For a long time, Sabrina's fantasies had kept her from reality. She believed that her rightful place was in Hollywood. Although Sabrina graduated from the Sorbonne with a degree in English and French literature, since 2006 she has changed careers several times in the fashion industry. She has worked as a stylist, makeup artist, and fashion designer, although she has no real expertise in these fields. Sabrina is a young girl with a charming appearance and a hobby of attracting men. However, she only takes advantage of their feelings, never being serious with them. Instead, she is waiting for the perfect man, a prince, who will fulfill everything she wants. After graduating, Sabrina has not yet determined her life goals. She feels entitled to enjoy life without having to make an effort. However, she enrolls in the prestigious Sorbonne University and works part-time at a sweet shop to earn money. At the sweet shop, Sabrina meets Wissam Madouni, a man 6 years older than her. Wissam is a manager at the headquarters of a large French company and is studying at a prestigious university. He aspires to get a master's degree to advance in his career. Wissam loves Sabrina very much and is willing to fulfill all her wishes. Sabrina also found Wissam attractive and saw him as someone she could control. Besides, she also saw Wissam as a ticket to a wealthy life. He was ambitious and had the potential to be very successful in his career, willing to pamper and please Sabrina. The couple began their relationship in 2000 and after a few months decided to move in together. However, Sabrina quickly revealed her true nature by controlling Wissam in every aspect of his life. If Wissam did not meet her demands, she would get angry and even beat Wissam. Sabrina also openly cheated on Wissam without hiding or justifying her actions. She had feelings for many people, including Wissam's close friends, colleagues, and random acquaintances. Although Wissam tried to end the relationship and leave her many times, he could not escape his deep love for Sabrina. In 2001, Wissam earned a master's degree and was promoted, earning him a substantial income. However, Wissam spent the money on luxury goods and entertaining Sabrina. Wissam and Sabrina were compatriots of French-Algerian origin. According to some reports, in the fall of 2001, the couple held a special Muslim ceremony to marry, which was certified by it issued by the Argento Mosque. The couple had a son, but years later, another man named Anthony Francois claimed to be the father of the child. In 2008, the global financial crisis hit hard, causing the company where Wissam worked to go bankrupt and he lost his high-paying job. At this time, Sabrina decided to move to London without discussing it with Wissam. Wissam no longer had any opportunities or hopes for a career here, so he decided to follow Sabrina to London. Upon arriving in London, Wissam found a job at a large bank. However, Sabrina had difficulty finding opportunities in the fashion industry, as she did not have enough skills, experience, and formal education in this field. After that, Sabrina tried many different jobs to find new opportunities. She worked as a nanny, a call center operator, a cafe worker, and even tried her hand at marketing. Sabrina's career journey turned to musician and composer. Despite her best efforts, Sabrina still had difficulty finding opportunities in the music industry. She participated in many auditions and social events to make connections. At one of these events, Sabrina met Mark Walton, a famous musician and composer, who was a member of the famous boy band Boyzone. After leaving the band, Mark became a successful music producer and collaborated with many famous artists such as Jennifer Lopez, Jessica Simpson, and Lady Gaga. In 2016, Mark's net worth exceeded $1 billion. Mark was exactly the person who helped Sabrina enter the world of fame and luxury. She impressed Mark with her beauty and charm. He also had to admit that he fell in love with her at first sight. Their relationship progressed quickly. Sabrina quickly ended her relationship with Wissam. Nothing stands in Sabrina's way. Within weeks, she moved in with Mark in a luxurious house in an upscale area of London. Mark paid all the bills, including rent, for the lavish house Sabrina chose. For months, Sabrina enjoyed the lavish lifestyle she had long desired, socializing with celebrities, attending high society events, wearing high-fashion clothes, and even appearing in magazines. However, when Sabrina became jealous of every woman around Mark and could not control her behavior, Sabrina's true colors began to show. Sabrina became increasingly demanding of extravagant gifts. Mark pampered her with designer clothes, jewelry, and trips to upscale restaurants and clubs, but that wasn't enough for her. The couple's home constantly changed maids, as Sabrina's paranoia led her to believe they were stealing or trying to seduce Mark. Her irrational behavior became too much for Mark to handle. In 2011, he ended the relationship and moved to California, leaving Sabrina penniless. After breaking up with Mark, Sabrina began giving interviews and accusing Mark of being severely abusive and having a habit of substance abuse. She called Mark constantly, crying and begging him to come back. She even threatened suicide, but he did not change his mind. After realizing that she couldn't win Mark back, Sabrina contacted Wissam, who was now a bank executive. He still loved Sabrina and was willing to forgive her after a period of separation. They reunited and continued living together. When Sabrina became pregnant with Wissam's child, she again informed Mark and claimed that the pregnancy was his. Mark, through his lawyer, expressed his desire to support Sabrina and the unborn child. He offered to pay the monthly child support. However, Sabrina did not agree to the amount of monthly child support that Mark paid. Sabrina wanted to double the child support and Mark did not agree. Mark wanted a paternity test after the child was born. Because Sabrina refused to take a paternity test, Mark did not change the child support. Sabrina sued him. Sabrina made false statements on social media and accused Mark of jealous behavior, threatening her and Wissam, accusing him of breaking into their home, attacking Wissam, and sexually assaulting her in unacceptable ways. However, Sabrina could not prove any of her claims because Mark had been in the United States since their separation, which proved he was not present at the scene. When Mark filed a lawsuit and the police threatened to take action against her, Sabrina stopped making those accusations. After the conflict seemed to have been resolved, she spent a lot of time in Wimbledon, southwest London, with Wissam and her 2 children. Sabrina's life was difficult with the housework and the care of 2 children, so Sabrina decided to hire a nanny to help with the housework. She posted a job ad online and personally conducted the interviews. Most of the candidates did not meet her requirements, and those who did meet her expectations did not stay long in her family. A young French woman named Sophie Lyonnette answered an advertisement for a babysitter. At the time, Sophie was 19 and was back in her home country of France, so the interview was conducted via video call. Sophie agreed to all the terms. Childcare, housekeeping, and cooking for a weekly wage of £50. Sophie was born on January 7, 1996, in the small town of Troyes, between Auxerre and Senators. Her parents, Catherine and Patrick Leon, were laborers, and the family was in dire financial straits. After graduating, Sophie received a degree in childcare, but had no intention of settling down in her hometown. Instead, she longed to move to a big city to develop her career. Although Sophie was quiet, unsociable, and had a plain appearance, she was very kind and open-minded, which made her loved by those who knew her. Sophie's eyesight was poor, forcing her to wear glasses all day. During a conversation, Sabrina quickly realized that Sophie was a simple and inexperienced person, which made Sophie the perfect target for Sabrina to take advantage of. Moreover, Sophie was eager to gain experience, so she was willing to work for minimum wage. Sophie, having told her parents that Sabrina was a serious and trustworthy employer, thought that working for Sabrina's family would be a good start to her nanny career. At first, everything seemed to go smoothly. She took care of the children, did the housework responsibly. This peaceful period lasted for a few months and there seemed to be no serious problems. However, things began to change when Wissam lost his job. At that time, Sabrina's family only had the monthly child support from Mark as their main source of income. So the family faced serious financial difficulties, high rent, and basic living expenses. Sabrina, not wanting to give up her luxurious lifestyle, became irritable and aggressive. She often took her anger out on Sophie, the young nanny. Sabrina and Wissam entered a bakery business with the last of their money, but the venture failed. Sabrina then opened a clothing store but did not have enough funds. She asked Mark for a large sum of money, but was flatly refused, leaving her disappointed. What happened next depends on the source. There are different versions of the story. Some sources claim that Sabrina came up with a plan to use Sophie as a weapon to blackmail Mark. She thought of having Sophie as Mark's accomplice and lover, supposedly planted in Sabrina's home to ruin their lives and endanger the children. Sabrina claimed that the provincial idiot Sophie was in love with Mark. She thought that simply recording Sophie's confession on tape or video and presenting it to the police would be enough evidence to demand compensation from Mark for his cruel actions. However, Sophie refused to lie on camera. Another version, due to her mental disorder, claims that Sabrina actually believed in her conspiracy theory and saw Sophie as an enemy and a threat to her family. She allegedly did not force the nanny to lie but truly believed that Sophie was Mark's accomplice who had infiltrated their family to harm them. Whatever the truth, Sophie's life soon became a living nightmare. Sophie first faced long hours of overwork and inadequate pay. She ended up working from dawn to dusk, with no time for herself, effectively imprisoned within the walls of the house. Next, her pay was cut off completely. To prevent her from escaping or returning to France, Sabrina took her passport, effectively making her a captive. All her contact with her family was tightly controlled. The situation got worse. Sophie was barely fed and was constantly forced to lie about Mark, whom she had never met or known. Sophie was insulted and threatened, accused of stealing money and valuables. She was threatened with imprisonment if she did not comply with Sabrina's demands. When threats no longer worked, Sabrina resorted to more brutal and sophisticated methods. Sophie was moved to a cold basement, fed only meager food. She became thin and weak, however, the cold and hunger were not the worst. She suffered physical abuse, subjected to the most painful torture. Sabrina broke Sophie's nose in a violent outburst. This division made the story clearer and easier to understand, and made the reader feel more comfortable. However, Sabrina's cruelty continued to increase, causing Sophie to suffer daily torture. The basement of the house, located in an affluent area of London, became a place of torture for Sophie, where she had no hope of being rescued. A strange event occurred in the late summer of 2017, when Sabrina took Sophie to the police to say that Sophie was ready to testify against Mark. However, Sophie remained silent. When the police decided to talk to Sophie privately, they took her to a separate apartment. At this point, Sabrina was extremely worried, afraid that Sophie would reveal the horrors that were happening at their home, which would implicate her and her husband. Mysteriously, Sophie chose not to reveal anything or seek help. The police response was also strange. Despite seeing a young woman who was malnourished, frightened and weak, they did not call a doctor or psychologist to ensure her health and safety. At the time, 21-year-old Sophie weighed less than 40 kilograms, had lost some of her hair, was missing a front tooth and was walking with a noticeable limp. However, none of this worried the police, who simply sent everyone home. By mid-September, Sophie made her final phone call to her mother. She confessed to her that she wanted to return home but did not have enough money. Sophie's mother, Catherine, only telling her that she would buy her a ticket and asking her to pack her things immediately. This was the last time Sophie spoke to her mother. On the evening of September 20th, 2017, something unexpected happened at Sabrina's house. A neighbor called the police about a fire in the yard, but what worried them was not the fire, but an unpleasant smell coming from the fire. The smell was similar to that of burnt flesh and hair, combined with something that could not be identified. This stench spread through the air and stuck to the clothes and skin of everyone around. When the firefighters and police arrived at the scene, they put out the fire. However, the homeowner appeared calm and did not know why the police and fire service had visited their home. The police saw what looked like a charred human hand in the ashes. Sabrina and Wissam were immediately arrested and the badly burned remains were removed from the fire. The sex and age of the deceased were unknown, but the body was soon identified as Sophie Lionnet, identified by the melted metal frame embedded in her skull that Sophie always wore. Determining Sophie's cause of death was difficult. Forensic experts found severe injuries to her body, including multiple broken ribs, a broken jaw, and signs of blunt force trauma to her skull and limbs. This suggests that she suffered these injuries while she was alive. Additionally, some of her teeth were missing and her nose was severely damaged, suggesting that she had been severely beaten. The discovery of horrifying videos of abuse inside the house exposed the brutal nature of Sophie's kidnappers. She had been violently attacked in a variety of ways, including with fists, iron wires, golf clubs, and electric shocks. She had also endured humiliation, including being forced to hold her head in a toilet bowl until she suffocated. Experts believe that Sophie may have died of asphyxiation just before being burned at the stake, which would have spared her the terrible pain of being alive while being burned. During the trial, both Sabrina and Wissam denied guilt and showed no remorse for their brutal actions. After the murder, Wissam went to a nearby supermarket to buy fuel to burn the body and cooked dinner for his family, as if the murder had never happened. The couple's first trial began in March 2018. Sabrina attempted to portray herself as the victim, blaming Mark for driving her into a pathological state with his relentless torture. However, medical tests showed that although Sabrina suffered from a mental disorder, she was not insane and fully understood her actions. Wissam was psychologically dependent on Sabrina despite his physical strength. She had a great influence over him and he would blindly listen to her every word. A former lover of Sabrina spoke out during the trial, describing her as a cunning manipulator rather than a crazy woman. On June 26, 2018, the court found Sabrina Khudr and Wissam Maduni guilty of torturing, insulting, and murdering nanny Sophie. The couple were sentenced to life in prison and must serve at least 30 years before being paroled. However, neither of them pleaded guilty. They repeatedly appealed for a lighter sentence. Sabrina even tried to pretend to be insane for a while to be transferred to a hospital instead of prison. But this plan failed. Mark Walton, who attended the trial, expressed remorse for his past relationship with Sabrina. He said she committed all these barbaric crimes to attract attention and make money from him. Mark sends his deepest condolences to Sophie's parents. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Kelsey Turner. Kelsey Turner was born on March 5, 1993, in Norfolk, Virginia, the second child of Samantha Ingram, who aspired to be a model and dancer. Growing up, Kelsey had an older brother named Colin. After her birth, her family moved to Jonesboro, Arkansas, a small industrial town where Kelsey spent most of her childhood. However, Her family life was turned upside down when her parents divorced after a few years. After the divorce, her father returned to Virginia. Kelsey grew up into a beautiful young woman with a perfect figure and attractive features that could easily lead to a modeling career. However, she found school unappealing and enjoyed socializing with friends, dating, and attending various social events. Her ultimate ambition was to become famous, appearing on magazine covers, giving interviews, and walking the red carpet at major events. Despite her ambition, Kelsey had no real talent and had to rely on her youth and looks to survive. While in high school, she began attending modeling auditions in hopes of starting a career. Her mother, Samantha, who dreamed of becoming a model, was happy to support her daughter in pursuing her dream. Unfortunately, Kelsey's modeling career was limited to a few small photo shoots for clothing catalogs. Kelsey married Jerry Turner at the age of 18, when she was already pregnant. Their daughter, Beverly, was born shortly after the wedding. However, the marriage did not last long and ended in divorce. By the age of 20, after giving up her modeling career, Kelsey decided to pursue a career as a men's magazine model. She quickly caught the attention of several men's magazines. Kelsey saw this as the beginning of a great career and a ticket to the life she had always dreamed of. Kelsey has received several modeling offers and opportunities over the years, including photo shoots for popular publications such as Playboy and Maxim, as well as a photo shoot with 110 magazine. She frequently travels to major cities such as Los Angeles and Las Vegas to pursue these opportunities. In an interview, Kelsey describes herself as a curvaceous blonde with a slim waist and reflects her carefree personality, saying that she likes to have fun, party with her friends, and live life to the fullest. Kelsey is not overly concerned about the future. She frequently changes partners and quickly spends any money she earns or receives from fans. At 23, Kelsey became pregnant again and gave birth to a son, Josh. The father of the child did not want to marry her or acknowledge his child. As the modeling offers dried up, Kelsey turned to social media to build an audience. She actively manages her accounts, posting revealing photos in swimsuits, lingerie, or only partially covering her private parts. Kelsey has cultivated the perfect online image. Her carefully edited photos make her look beautiful, and her social media pages showcase her visits to high-end fashion stores, trendy nightclubs, and other locations. However, this ideal online image hid the true struggles of a single mother of two. Despite her wealthy appearance, her real life was difficult, as she was a poor money manager, often spending all her income at once. Around 2016, Kelsey faced serious problems after an unfortunate incident with her daughter. The girl suffered a severe trauma that left her daughter withdrawn and unable to speak. An acquaintance advised her to take her daughter to a psychiatrist. So she contacted renowned pediatric psychiatrist Dr. Thomas Burchard, who practiced in Monterey, California, to treat her daughter. Dr. Thomas Burchard is a highly respected pediatric psychiatrist who was born on February 16, 1948, in Boston, Massachusetts. He is the son of a prominent architect and engineer, and his family later moved to Virginia. Although his father taught architecture at prestigious institutions, including Harvard, Thomas chose a different path and pursued a medical career, focusing on child psychology. After completing medical school, Dr. Thomas served as a resident in pediatric psychiatry at several leading hospitals and taught at universities across the country. He eventually settled at a public clinical hospital on California's Monterey Peninsula, where he spent more than 40 years as a pediatric psychiatrist, building an impeccable reputation for his exceptional ability to connect with young patients and handle even the most complex and severe cases. He earned his doctorate from the University of California, Berkeley. Thomas was known for being kind, sharp, and incredibly generous. His compassionate nature motivated him to help those in need, especially young patients whose parents could not afford therapy. He also paid for hospital treatment for sick children from low-income families and supported single mothers. Dr. Thomas had a longtime companion named Di, who served as an assistant, housekeeper, and possibly more. As someone who knew him well, she was the first to notice changes in his behavior that showed early signs of dementia or Alzheimer's. As Dr. Thomas entered his 70s, he became increasingly forgetful, absent-minded, and distracted. To hide these symptoms from his colleagues, he kept detailed diaries and notebooks to record important information, such as names, dates, and events. He always carried a notebook in his breast pocket that contained sensitive information such as bank information, account numbers, passwords, and card pins. When Kelsey first visited Dr. Thomas with her daughter, she expressed her difficulties as a single mother and her inability to afford his services. However, the doctor offered to provide his services for free and went on to give Kelsey $300 to help support her children. Kelsey was shocked but quickly discovered that by sharing tearful stories of her difficult life, she could extort more money from the elderly doctor. Kelsey prepared a detailed plan for her next appointment with Dr. Thomas. During the visit, she told a heartbreaking story about her youngest son's illness and lack of money to buy expensive medicine for him. She gave a specific amount of money that she needed, and surprisingly, she received the entire amount from Dr. Thomas. Kelsey continued to make up false, tearful stories in the following visits. She would make up stories of hardship and receive larger and larger amounts of money from this trustworthy doctor. Of course, she did not use the money for her children but for her own entertainment, designer clothes. Not wanting to return to her hometown of Virginia, Kelsey asked Thomas to pay for her rent in California, saying that she could find work there more easily and that the climate there was better for her children. Thomas agreed and paid for the apartment she had chosen. Some people suspected that the doctor had an affair with Kelsey, a young blonde model, and that was why he always indulged her requests. However, Kelsey claimed that Thomas treated her and her children like family and acted out of kindness, not love. Thomas provided Kelsey and her children with a home, paid their bills, and gave them a large sum of money for their necessities. He also leased her a luxury Mercedes-Benz convertible. Over time, Kelsey realized that her modeling career was over and her youth was slipping away. Despite this, she made no effort to find another job and instead relied on Dr. Thomas for financial support. During this time, he spent about $500,000 on Kelsey and her children. However, she squandered that money on personal indulgences, such as breast augmentation and liposuction, in hopes of reviving her modeling career. Kelsey's excessive spending and partying lifestyle led to her neglecting her children. This eventually led to her ex-husband, who had won sole custody of their daughter through the courts, stripping Kelsey of her parental rights. As a result, Kelsey was left with only her youngest son. Thomas was furious when he discovered the situation, but his anger was directed at Kelsey, not at her ex-husband. It was clear that Kelsey had neglected her children and was using the money meant for their care to support her lavish lifestyle. Dr. Thomas decided to address the issue with Kelsey, informing her that he would no longer support her lavish and idle lifestyle. However, Kelsey responded by threatening to spread false rumors that Dr. Thomas had inappropriate feelings for his young patients. Although he knew this was a lie, Dr. Thomas realized that any further rumors about the matter could seriously damage his reputation as a respected pediatric psychiatrist and scholar. Faced with this threat, Dr. Burchard reluctantly gave in to Kelsey's demands and continued to support her financially. In 2019, Kelsey moved to Las Vegas with her son to try to revive her modeling career, and she expected Thomas, whom she was blackmailing, to fund the effort. As instructed, Thomas rented a house for her and provided the requested funds. However, after receiving the financial support, Kelsey disappeared for 2 months and her whereabouts were unknown. Later that year, in February, Kelsey reappeared, contacting Thomas in an emotional state, saying that she was seriously ill, unable to work. and in dire financial straits. When Thomas refused to help, Kelsey's attitude changed completely and she continued to threaten and blackmail him. Judy, who was close to Thomas, advised him to report Kelsey's behavior to the police and contact Child Protective Services, due to concerns about Kelsey's ability to care for her younger son, especially since she had previously lost parental rights to her older daughter. Dr. Thomas took steps to prepare in case the conflict with Kelsey escalated in court. He informed his colleagues of the situation, and they agreed to support him. Judy had previously attempted to resolve the issue by speaking directly with Kelsey. Unfortunately, her efforts only resulted in Kelsey threatening retaliation. Thomas decided to travel to Las Vegas to verify Kelsey's claims. Judy tried to dissuade Thomas, but he was adamant about traveling to Las Vegas to meet with Kelsey. Judy also offered to accompany him as a friend for support, but Dr. Thomas insisted on handling the matter himself. He finally set off on March 1, 2019. On the morning of March 7th, a group of tourists got lost while traveling through Nevada. While trying to get to Lake Mead, they took a dirt road off the main highway. They came across a Mercedes-Benz convertible parked in the desert. The roof was closed and the windows were rolled up, but unusually, there was no one around the car. Intrigued, the tourists cautiously approached the car and saw that one of the windows was broken. Upon further investigation, they looked inside and saw signs of a struggle. There were blood stains all over the interior. The tourists quickly contacted the police to report their shocking discovery. Police arrived at the scene around noon and discovered an unbearable stench. The source of the smell was quickly identified when police opened the trunk. Inside, they found the body of an elderly man hidden under a pile of furniture and rags. Beside him was a blood-stained baseball bat. The victim was later identified as Dr. Thomas, who had been missing for 5 days. Judy reported Dr. Thomas missing on March 2nd when she was unable to reach him at their scheduled meeting time. She immediately suspected something terrible had happened and contacted the police, hoping he would be found alive. The autopsy revealed numerous serious injuries to Thomas's body. These included scratches, bruises, and superficial cuts, as well as a severe head injury that may have been caused by a baseball bat found in the trunk of the car next to him. Part of his ear was severed, and his hands had multiple cuts that suggested a desperate attempt to defend himself. Thomas's face also had noticeable bruises with a unique printed pattern. Most shocking was the evidence that the man had been placed in the trunk of the car while still alive and injured, eventually suffocating from the intense desert heat. The investigation focused on Kelsey Turner as the prime suspect, as the car at the crime scene had been rented under her name. Judy had provided the police with Kelsey's address, which matched the location Dr. Thomas had visited. However, when the police arrived at the scene, they found the house empty. Although no one was there, the house showed signs of a hasty cleanup. Containers of cleaning products were scattered throughout the house and the air smelled strongly of household chemicals, suggesting that someone had tried to erase any evidence of the crime. The house was occupied by Kelsey, her 4-year-old son, and her new boyfriend, John Logan Kennison, along with 2 neighbors, Diana Pina and Jeremy Eerie. All had fled, making them suspects, as Kelsey could not have inflicted such injuries on the doctor or placed his body in the trunk of her car herself. Jeremy Eerie was the only person the police interviewed. He explained that he and his girlfriend had left Kelsey's house while the doctor was still alive. According to Jeremy, his girlfriend had been drinking heavily and began flirting with Thomas, trying to extort money from him, similar to Kelsey's tactics. This made Kelsey extremely angry, as she accused Jeremy's girlfriend of trying to steal Thomas from her. The situation became worse, and Jeremy had to quickly move his girlfriend out of the house to avoid a fight. He did not return for several days and was unaware of what had happened after he left. During the investigation, the police learned from Judy that Dr. Thomas kept a notebook with his bank account information and passwords, which he frequently lost. When they searched, they discovered that the notebook was missing. Furthermore, 2 of Dr. Thomas's accounts showed significant withdrawals on March 3rd, after which Thomas's accounts and cards were immediately closed. On March 21st, in Stockton, California, police arrested Kelsey and her boyfriend for attempting to withdraw money again. It was later discovered that the couple had stayed in various motels with a child, paid in cash, and moved frequently. They initially attempted to drain all of Thomas's accounts but were unsuccessful. They then attempted to withdraw more money with the intention of fleeing to Mexico but were prevented by the accounts being closed. Diana, a neighbor who was at Kelsey's home that night, cooperated with police and shared her account of what happened on the night of March 7th. According to her, the trouble began after Jeremy and his girlfriend left. Kelsey had a heated argument with Dr. Thomas, who refused to give her money. Kelsey threatened to ruin the doctor's reputation by spreading rumors about his misconduct with young patients. As the argument escalated, Kelsey became aggressive. Dr. Thomas, feeling threatened, locked himself in his room. However, John broke the door open with a strong shoulder thrust and then hit Thomas hard with a baseball bat. This caused a serious injury, resulting in a large hematoma and a nosebleed. Diana rushed in, pleading with everyone to calm down. Seeing Thomas's condition, she urged them to take him to the hospital, fearing the consequences of their actions. After hearing Thomas say that he would tell the police that he had been attacked and robbed by strangers, the 4 drove to the garage. Diana was ordered by Kelsey to return to the house and clean up, removing all traces of blood. Diana followed the instructions and began cleaning, but soon heard screams and a struggle coming from the garage. She rushed back to find the couple brutally attacking Dr. Thomas in the car. The doctor was trapped and unable to escape or defend himself. It became clear that Kelsey and John had no intention of taking Thomas to the hospital. Instead, they planned to kill him with a baseball bat, a small knife, and John's empty pistol, leaving bruises on the doctor's face. Diana was instructed to return to the house and continue cleaning. Fearing for her safety, she complied and left the garage. While Diana was still cleaning, she heard the couple's car drive away. Several hours later, John's car returned with Kelsey, but the other car, a convertible, was nowhere to be seen. Diana remained unaware of the convertible's location until she heard about a car found in the desert with a body in the trunk. Diana chose to cooperate with the police from the start by agreeing to a plea deal and sharing all relevant information she knew. This decision resulted in a reduced sentence for tampering with evidence, serving just 3 years in prison. John Logan Kennison was convicted of murder and sentenced to 45 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 18 years. Kelsey Turner's trial was more complicated. After her arrest, she announced that she was pregnant, causing significant delays in the trial. While in custody, she gave birth to a baby girl who, along with her son, was placed under the protection of social services, as none of Kelsey's relatives were willing to take on the responsibility. Kelsey Turner was sentenced to 25 years in prison in January 2023, with the possibility of parole after serving at least 10 years. She is currently serving her sentence at the Florence McClure Correctional Center for Women in Las Vegas. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Michaela Garrecht. Sharon Murch and her husband, Rod Garrecht, had been trying to have a child for 5 years. After numerous visits to doctors and fertility treatments, they were overjoyed when their daughter Michaela Garrecht was born on January 24, 1979, in Oakland, California. Her parents affectionately referred to her as their miracle child due to the difficulties they faced in conceiving her. After that, their family soon welcomed 2 new members, a daughter named Libby and a son named Alex. In 1986, the family relocated to Hayward, where they settled down, established their home, and raised their children. As a child, Michaela was known for being intelligent, lively, and well-behaved. She listened attentively to her parents and followed their advice closely. Sharon was a caring and attentive mother. Sometimes it makes others feel like she's being overprotective of her children. Given the rise in child abductions in California during the 1980s, her caution was understandable. As a result, she always kept her children close to home and ensured they were never far from adult supervision. On Saturday, November 19, 1988, Michaela finished breakfast with her family. Her best friend, 9-year-old Katrina Rodriguez, stopped by to ask if Michaela could accompany her to the local grocery store to buy snacks. Initially, Sharon, Michaela's mother, refused permission. However, Michaela persisted, assuring her mother that they would be safe and return quickly. Eventually, Sharon relented and gave her permission to go with you. As a precaution, Sharon reminded they to be careful. She gave Michaela $5, then the girls eagerly grabbed their scooters and left. Before leaving, Michaela expressed her love for her mother. As Sharon watched them leave, her husband Rod decided to go outside and work on the car. Meanwhile, Sharon headed back inside to clean up the breakfast dishes. Unbeknownst to her, the next few minutes would alter her life forever. Michaela and Katrina eagerly rode their scooters to the Rainbow Market on Mission Boulevard and parked them right outside the store. The girls then entered the market to buy some snacks. They purchased 2 Mountain Dew sodas, 2 beef jerky sticks, and 2 cherry toffees before exiting the store. Engrossed in a conversation about their holiday plans, they completely forgot about their scooters. As they were about to leave the parking lot, they suddenly remembered their scooters were still outside. To their surprise, the scooters was missing. The girls decided to split up and search for it. Michaela spotted the scooter first. It had been moved about 3 parking spaces away and was now standing beside a car. Without hesitation, Michaela rushed over to the scooter and bent down to grab the handlebars. In a rapid and unexpected turn of events, a man leapt from the car and grabbed Michaela around her waist. He then forcefully pushed her into the back seat. Witnessing the shocking scene unfold, Katrina momentarily froze, her eyes fixed on the chaotic scene as her friend struggled to break free from the abductor's grasp. The car sped away from the parking space, accelerating down Mission Boulevard toward Union City. Regaining her composure, Katrina rushed back into the store and alerted the cashier, Rona Ranilan, about the kidnapping. Rona quickly called the local police, and they were quickly present at the crime scene. Additionally, Rona also contacted Katrina's father and told them what had just happened to their daughter. Sharon was doing the dishes at home when she heard a frantic shout from outside. Her husband, Rod, burst through the front door, telling her that Michaela had just been kidnapped outside the Rainbow Market. Along with Katrina's father, they rushed to the store and found police everywhere, questioning customers and staff. Katrina was extremely upset and was allowed to go home with her father. Rod and Sharon stayed behind, hoping to get some information about what had happened. However, as Sharon waited anxiously, she couldn't shake off a growing sense of fear. Sharon recalled a poem written by Michaela. She also remembered an incident from the week before that had left her unsettled. Specifically, Sharon had woken up early one morning to find Michaela sitting at the breakfast table, writing in the early hours. Michaela's mother asked her what she was working on, and Michaela vaguely replied that she was writing a poem. Sharon asking repeatedly what the poem was about. Michaela finally explained that her poem was inspired by the noises she had heard coming from the attic that morning. She had been thinking about people who were kidnapped and being held captive, and her poem was about their experiences. She explained that the poem actually referred to individuals who were being detained against their will, rather than those who had been kidnapped and murdered. Sharon found Michaela's poem to be disturbing and out of character. as her daughter was typically a happy person. In hindsight, Sharon believes that Michaela may have written the poem as a kind of prophecy or premonition. The police were provided with a description of the man who allegedly kidnapped Michaela. Rona, a cashier, told them that the suspect was a white male in his 30s with a mustache. She also reported that he drove a car that was either burgundy or maroon in color, but was unable to provide details about the make or model. According to Rona, the man had parked his car and gotten out, but instead of entering the store, he looked through the window, observing the girls and other customers without entering. She suspected he might be planning to rob the store. A sketch artist created a composite picture, then distributed to local police stations and news outlets. The investigators found the scooter used in the abduction and collected it as evidence. They obtained a handprint from the scooter handle, which was added to their database to identify the kidnapper. But it did not lead to any leads. The day after the kidnapping, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, joined the investigation, they suspecting a relevance between a series of local child kidnappings, but this was ultimately not confirmed. Police soon realized that Katrina could provide more information about the suspect since she was the main witness to the abduction. 2 days after the incident, investigators visited her home. They spoke with her and her parents, and the information she provided shocked them. Her description of the kidnapper greatly differed from the one provided by the store cashier. Katrina described him as a young white male in his early 20s with dirty blonde hair, severe acne scarring, and blue eyes. Katrina vividly recalled the suspect's eyes, describing them to investigators as fox eyes. She explained that despite his look straight at her, but he didn't seem to recognize her. Additionally, she told investigators that the suspect's car was beige or tan in color, box-shaped, and had noticeable body damage. The new description raises concerns as it means the crucial 48 hours to find a suspect has been wasted on finding the wrong person. Investigators reprinted posters with the new suspect's description and redistributed them throughout the area. Armed with this fresh information, they began visiting local sex offenders, inquiring about potential leads. A large number of volunteers joined, going door to door and distributing posters that detailed Michaela's clothing: a white Metro t-shirt, rolled-up blue denim jeans, black Mary Jane shoes, and pearl-colored feather-shaped earrings. After searching the nearby suburbs but finding no sign of Michaela, police expanded their search, include the Garin National Park and Niles Canyon, which are just a short distance from the She home. This decision was prompted by a tip from 3 hikers, who claimed to have found footprints in the forest area, belonging to 1 adult and 1 child. Upon following the tracks, the hikers discovered a blanket and empty fast food containers. A psychological analysis of the kidnapper suggested they would likely take Michaela to a secluded location. To aid in the search, helicopters were equipped with infrared thermal cameras to detect heat signatures in the dense wooded areas. Police officers also combed the area on horseback and on foot, but these efforts did not produce any results. Unfortunately, Michaela and her kidnapper seemed to have vanished without a trace. The search for Michaela made national headlines, and her case was featured on prominent television programs such as Unsolved Mysteries and America's Most Wanted. Her photo was also distributed on milk cartons, and the Missing Children's program sent over 50 million mailing cards to homes across the country. These cards included a picture of Michaela, a description of her clothing, and a composite sketch of the kidnapper. San Francisco 49ers quarterback Joe Montana publicly showed his support for the Michaela family and urged the public to come forward with any information. A $70,000 reward was offered for any information related to Michaela's disappearance. Within the first year, the police received over 5,000 tips, the majority of which were unfounded rumors. Despite this, the community remained dedicated to finding Michaela. Sharon conducted her own investigation and found some clues, some taking her as far as Russia, but none produced any results. A significant break in the case occurred between 1991 and 1992, when an inmate in Indiana provided authorities with crucial information regarding Michaela's disappearance. Roger Haggard, who was serving an 11-year sentence for burglary, claimed to have helped a friend bury Michaela's body in a gladiolus field in Union City. At first, the investigators were skeptical and did not think his claims were credible enough to be investigated further. Undeterred, Roger decided to reach out to the media for help. In 1992, he wrote a letter to the San Francisco Chronicle, stating that he knew who had kidnapped Michaela and where her body was buried. He offered to lead investigators to the location. Investigators brought Roger to California to testify before a grand jury. Roger repeated his earlier claims under oath, promised to lead investigators to Michaela's burial site and the home of her killer. The next day, a team of investigators accompanied Roger to the field where he claimed Michaela's body was buried. After 8 hours of searching, Roger confessed that his claim was false. He explained that his intention was to provide the Michaela family a sense of peace after all these years. This confession had even more serious consequences for Roger. He was charged with perjury and received an additional 6 years prison sentence, along with an order to pay $6,000 in damages to Michaela's family for giving them false hope. This development would not be the only one to shake the investigation. Authorities also kept an eye on another individual, Lawrence Binder, 43, a wastewater treatment plant worker. He appeared to be a normal man, married with a family. However, suspicions were raised when investigators received a tip from East Bay Area parents about his disturbing behavior. These parents claimed that he had been sending gifts and money to young girls in an attempt to befriend them. What's more, some of the letters he wrote were written in reverse, requiring the recipient to use a mirror to decipher their meaning. As investigators dug deeper into Lawrence's past, they found that he drove a distinctive light blue van with the license plate, "Love You." The interior of the van was peculiarly decorated with photos of small children, children's drawings, and biblical verses. Furthermore, Lawrence had a previous arrest record for attempting to lure 2 young girls into his van, although the charges were eventually dropped. Lawrence often inserted himself into investigations of missing children. For instance, following the 1988 disappearance of Michaela, he reached out to her mother, Sharon. He also contacted Kim Schwartz, the mother of 7-year-old Amber Schwartz, who went missing in June 1988. In both cases, the mothers eventually told the police that they felt uneasy about Lawrence's persistence in contacting them and trying to stay updated on the developments in their daughters' cases. After uncovering a series of unusual circumstances, the investigation led authorities to suspect Lawrence of being involved in a series of child abductions. When Amber went missing, Lawrence wrote to the police predicting the next victim would be a 9-year-old girl. This proved true when Michaela missing. Lawrence further raised suspicions when he sending a Christmas card with a picture of a girl holding up 4 fingers to an FBI profiler. This incident took on a more ominous tone when 4-year-old Amanda Campbell went missing on December 27, 1991. Lawrence was also linked to the disappearance of Eileen Mischelhoff, a 13-year-old girl from Dublin, California. As Lawrence's name became associated with the string of child abductions, he found himself under intense media scrutiny. His unusual behavior and fascination with the cases sparked widespread public interest, leading many people to suspect he was involved. As a result, Lawrence and his family faced harassment and public backlash. However, after Lawrence sued the city of Fairfield for defamation and won, investigators began to reassess his role in the case. It became clear that he was not as involved as initially thought, and many believed he was simply trying to insert himself into the investigation. Despite the mystery surrounding Lawrence, the case remained a complex challenge for investigators. In addition, there is a new suspect, Curtis Dean Anderson, he was arrested in August 2000 and subsequently linked to a series of heinous crimes. After his arrest, Anderson confessed to the 1999 abduction and murder of 7-year-old Ziana Fairchild from Vallejo, California. During a 2007 FBI interview, Anderson made a shocking claim: he had murdered 13 additional women and girls. He also admitted to abducting and killing 7-year-old Amber Swartz, whom he had seen standing on a street corner. However, Curtis's life ended abruptly on December 9, 2007, when he died due to kidney and liver failure. This untimely death prevented investigators from gathering more information about Curtis's past crimes. Following his confession, investigators looked into Curtis's background and found a coincidence. In 1989, he was pulled over in a brown 1977 Chevy sedan, matched the vehicle description given by a witness named Katrina. Despite Curtis's death, his confession reignited interest in a more notorious case, the kidnapping of Michaela. The renewed investigation brought new attention and generated fresh leads. However, a new development in August 2012 shed more light on the case. Wesley Sherman, one half of the notorious Speed Freaks duo, reached out to the Stockton Record after his accomplice, Loren Herzog, took his own life in January that year. Wesley pointed out that Loren was to bear an uncanny resemblance to the suspect's composite in Michaela's case. The resemblance between Loren and a kidnapper is further confirmed by Katrina's observations, which indicate that Loren shares very similar characteristics to Michaela's kidnapper. Following a lead from Wesley, investigators began excavating a well in Linden, California, where him and Loren was believed to have disposed of Michaela's remains. The excavation uncovered thousands of bone fragments, some likely belonging to Michaela. Although investigators never lost hope of solving the case, the mystery continued to baffle them. It wasn't until 8 years later that a useful clue finally emerged. The circumstances surrounding Michaela's disappearance were horrifying and had a profound impact on the public. However, more shocking revelations were yet to come. On December 21, 2020, the Hayward Police Department and FBI made a significant announcement in the Michaela case, revealing a surprising development. Despite initial suspicions focusing on Loren and Wesley, but then investigators charged 61 years old David Garrick with Michaela's kidnapping and murder. Advances in technology played a crucial role in solving the case, by linking David's fingerprints to those found on Michaela's scooter 32 years earlier, in 1988. David Misch has been charged with the murder of Michaela and is currently in custody at Santa Rita Jail in Alameda County. An examination of David's past reveals a disturbing pattern of crime that dates back to his teenage years. Born on February 19, 1961, in Chicago, Illinois, little is known about David's upbringing. However, by the age of 16, he had already become involved in criminal activities. In 1977, he was convicted of breaking into a house, where he sexually assaulted a maid at knife point. He was arrested and sentenced but was paroled just a year later, in 1978. David's troubles with the law continued. In February 1979, he was arrested for charges of false imprisonment and assault with a deadly weapon, which were later updated to assault with intent to rape. Despite this, he became eligible for parole in September 1981. Years later, in May 1988, David was arrested for burglary at a San Leandro grocery store. He was sentenced to 1 year in prison and 1 year of probation. In November of the same year, he was released from custody after 6 months. However, his luck eventually ran out in December 1988. That year, a tragic incident happened to his longtime friend Margaret Ball, who was 38 years old. She often helped him in times of need, but the nature of their relationship took a drastic turn. Margaret's dead body was discovered by her stepdaughter in a pool of blood, brutally beaten and stabbed. The crime scene was particularly gruesome, with Margaret's front tooth found a few feet away from her body due to the severity of the beating. The police were led to David as the primary suspect after discovering evidence linking him to the crime. He was arrested and eventually convicted of Margaret's murder, while David was already serving time for Margaret's murder. New evidence led to additional charges against him. In 2018, he was sentenced to 18 years to life for Margaret's murder. A DNA analysis later implicated David in 2 murders that occurred in Fremont, California, in 1986. 2 young women, Michelle Xavier, 18, and her best friend, Jennifer Dewey, 20, had gone out to celebrate a family member's birthday dinner on February 2, 1986. After leaving the restaurant, they stopped at a convenience store. However, shortly after midnight, their bodies were found on the side of the road by a motorcyclist. The scene revealed a disturbing and violent crime. The women were stripped naked, they had been stabbed and shot. An autopsy later revealed that they had also been sexually assaulted. The car Michelle was driving was discovered 6 miles away from the crime scene in a grocery store parking lot. Michaela's case was forgotten for many years due to lack of clues and information. However, 32 years later, advances in DNA technology led detectives to a suspect, David Garrick. He is currently serving time, faces additional charges, including 3 counts of murder and 1 count of abduction, which could result in the death penalty. Chief Hayward vowed to continue the search for Michaela's body and remains hopeful that she will be found. Michaela's father, Rod Garrick, traveled over 100 miles to attend a recent press conference. He expressed a sense of relief knowing that the police have caught suspect. The authorities have a suspect to question, and hopefully, this person will provide information about Michaela's whereabouts. Sharon, Michaela's mother, was unable to attend a press conference due to her ongoing battle with metastatic cancer. Police Chief Hayward read a statement on her behalf, which revealed her struggle to accept the reality of her daughter's fate. In the past year, she had to accept the likelihood that Michaela was no longer alive. However, she found comfort in imagining her in a peaceful afterlife, sitting on clouds, walking on golden streets, dancing on hills, and soaring among the stars. Bernie Castillo, the attorney for David, has been vocal about the case and strongly criticizes the investigation methods used to charge his client. He dismisses the evidence as junk science and finds it implausible that a handprint match was suddenly found after 32 years. Bernie believes the police are trying to pin the blame solely on David as a convenient way to close the case. Meanwhile, Katrina, Michaela's close friend and witness to the case, has been carrying guilt over, still remembers the tragic incident that occurred that Saturday morning. She feels that it should have been her, as the scooter that was moved belonged to her. This burden of guilt has caused Katrina to suppress memories of her childhood. In contrast, Sharon, Michaela's mother, dedicated her life to finding her daughter. Initially, she waited anxiously for news at the telephone and later turned to the internet for answers. However, after David was charged with Michaela's murder, Sharon's fight for justice began to fade due to her cancer diagnosis. She eventually passed away in May 2022, finding solace in the fact that she would soon be reunited with her daughter. A new twist has arisen in the complicated case of David, who is currently awaiting trial for his alleged involvement in the kidnapping and murder of Michaela, as well as the murders of Michelle and Jennifer. The search for justice for Michaela has been going on for decades, but may now face a significant obstacle. It seems David, the suspect, might not face the full severity of the punishment for the allegations against him. In contrast, David's defense attorney, Ernie, viewed the news as validation, stating that each case against David relies on questionable forensic tactics. Bernie was not surprised by the decision, as it confirms his long-held belief that the prosecution's case has significant weaknesses. Others, however, disagree with the decision. Chuck Euler, a retired lieutenant who worked on another case involving David, believed he should receive the maximum sentence for his crimes. David is currently awaiting trial for 3 counts of murder and 1 count of kidnapping. His case is closely tied to the mysterious disappearance of Michaela, a story filled with unexpected twists and turns. However, the investigation was marred by an initial case of mistaken identity, leading police to waste valuable time in the first 2 days. As a result, Michaela's family was left searching for answers for decades. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Elizabeth Nicole Forshee Cyperda. Elizabeth was born on May 13, 1978, in Truckee, California. She lived with her parents and younger brother. When Elizabeth was 13, the Cyperda family moved across the street. Michael and Sally Cyperda had 2 young children and were struggling to balance work and family. Michael wanted Sally to go back to work, so they decided to find a babysitter. Michael suggested hiring Elizabeth, then 14, to babysit their children. Sally agreed, and Elizabeth began babysitting for the neighbor's family. Elizabeth grew attached to Michael and Sally's children as she spent more time with them. The children also enjoyed being around her. When Elizabeth was 15, her father passed away, a traumatic event that deeply affected her. According to her mother, Donna Forshee, Elizabeth became more sensitive and vulnerable after this event. She began to admire and grow closer to Michael Cyperda, seeing him as an ideal father figure. Elizabeth believes that Michael loves his children unconditionally and supports their interests. Elizabeth used to babysit Michael and Sally's children during the day. However, she started staying at their house until late at night. This continued for about 2 years. One day, Michael decided to move to Iowa with his family to be closer to his relatives. He invited Elizabeth to come along as a babysitter. Elizabeth's mother, Donna, strongly objected and tried to stop her daughter, even calling Child Protective Services to intervene. However, Donna's efforts were in vain. Elizabeth was too attached to Michael, Sally, and their 2 children. Although she was still in high school, she was determined to stick with her decision and moved to Winfield, Iowa with Cyperda's family. After Elizabeth moved away, her mother Donna and her best friend Shannon Gerber maintained regular contact with her, either by phone or by weekly letters. Elizabeth graduated from high school in Iowa in May 1997. Donna attended her graduation and gave her daughter an emerald and diamond ring, which Elizabeth treasured. During this time, Michael divorced his wife, Sally, and began a relationship with Elizabeth. After the divorce, Sally left the children with Michael and Elizabeth and moved away. Although Sally maintained contact with her children, she cut off all contact with Michael and stopped speaking to Elizabeth. Michael, then in her 40s, immediately demonstrated his controlling nature. He limited what Elizabeth could and could not do, as well as who she could talk to. He attempted to control every aspect of Elizabeth's life. From the beginning, their relationship seemed dysfunctional. As a result, Elizabeth's mother and best friend Shannon found it increasingly difficult to contact her. Michael did not like Elizabeth talking to them and would often get angry if she did. As a result, Elizabeth would only dare to call them when Michael was not home. During this time, Elizabeth became friends with Harper Tracy through church. Harper noticed that Elizabeth had suffered 5 or 6 injuries during their friendship, including finger marks on her neck and bruises on her stomach. Harper's daughter, Sadie, who was about 7 years old, knew Michael's children through church and occasionally played at their home. Sadie remembers one time when she visited, she witnessed Michael pushing Elizabeth down the stairs and kneeling on her. Harper also remembers Elizabeth arriving at church in a state of panic and fear after fleeing a violent argument with Michael. Elizabeth confided that she was afraid of Michael and could not take any more abuse. Harper discovered multiple bruises on Elizabeth's stomach and marks on her arms. Elizabeth stayed in Harper's trailer for a month. During that time, Michael appeared near the trailer almost every day and acted threateningly. He would park his truck about 10 feet away from the trailer and tease Elizabeth. Specifically, he threatened her by saying that Elizabeth would be isolated and no one would find her if she did not listen to him. He left hazmat notices and a torn cat collar outside, along with a message warning that she would disappear like the cat if she did not return. He also threatened to harm the family's animals and began blackmailing her with videotapes and photos he had. According to Harper, he threatened to kill Elizabeth and dispose of her body 6 times. Harper called the police to stop him, but unfortunately, they were unsuccessful. There were clearly many warning signs about Michael. Everyone saw him as someone to stay away from. However, Elizabeth was young and naive, so she still hoped that Michael would change. Unfortunately, at the age of 40, people rarely change their behavior and attitude towards others. After a long time of pressure from Michael, eventually, Elizabeth decided to leave Harper's trail to live with Michael. They married in January 1998 in Mount Pleasant. Despite her attempts to prevent the marriage, Harper attended their wedding. Afterwards, Michael took the initiative to cut off all contact between Harper and Elizabeth. At Michael's request, Elizabeth finally told Harper not to come to their house anymore. Harper was not the only one concerned about Elizabeth and Michael's marriage. Elizabeth's mother, Donna, also disapproved of the relationship and refused to come to Iowa for her daughter's wedding. However, in June 2000, Elizabeth went to California to attend her younger brother's high school graduation. Although Michael stayed in Iowa, he continued to keep an eye on Elizabeth. During the 3 days Elizabeth stayed with her mother, Michael called her repeatedly. He was concerned that Donna was trying to influence Elizabeth not to return to Iowa. After each call, Elizabeth felt sad and confused. She considered leaving her husband but was not sure. To reassure Michael, Elizabeth moved out of her mother's house and moved in with Shannon Gerber, her childhood friend. Shannon had kept in touch with Elizabeth since Elizabeth moved to Iowa. They tried to talk every month, often calling when Michael was not home. However, Elizabeth's move to live with her friend did not lessen Michael's anger. Instead, he began harassing Shannon by calling her repeatedly. Most of the calls were threatening. Shannon recalled Michael threatening Elizabeth. He screamed at her and said he would kill her if she did not come home. Michael also threatened to kill Elizabeth's mother, younger brother, Shannon, and her young son. He called her constantly, day and night, sometimes dozens of times an hour. Finally, Shannon's husband couldn't take it anymore and turned off the phone. This clearly made Michael even angrier. Shannon begged Elizabeth not to return to Iowa. "I didn't want her to go because I was afraid I would never see her again," Shannon confided. She deliberately took a detour to the airport, hoping Elizabeth would miss her flight. However, the flight was delayed and Elizabeth was still able to catch it. After returning to Mount Pleasant, Iowa, Elizabeth began working at Experian. There, she met Sarah Thomas, a coworker who quickly became her best friend. Because Sarah lived near the Sipura family home, she often took Elizabeth home after work. During these trips, they talked a lot and Elizabeth gradually trusted Sarah. She shared with Sarah about her difficult relationship with her husband, Michael, and even showed Sarah the bruises on her body that Michael had caused. Elizabeth and Sarah became very close to each other, close enough to cause problems. One day, while Michael was away, his 2 children peered through the bedroom keyhole and saw Sarah and Elizabeth getting intimate. When Elizabeth discovered that the children had witnessed the scene, she hastily packed up and moved in with Sarah. When Sarah's girlfriend, Terry, went outside to walk the dog, Michael came over and asked her to call Sarah's work phone and ask Elizabeth to return home. He had a bottle of alcohol in his hand, and his children were following him and crying. Michael explained that his wife had left him, she was not answering his calls, and he did not know what to do. When Elizabeth and Sarah entered the apartment, they saw Michael and Terry waiting for them. Frightened, Elizabeth and Sarah left. Michael shouted at Terry to follow him. They got into the car and gave chase. The two couples met face to face in a nearby parking lot. Terry started fighting with Sarah because she felt betrayed. Elizabeth was sitting in the car at the time and was afraid to get out. Cursing, screaming, and threatening, Michael approached Elizabeth and dragged her out through the window of the car. During the struggle, Elizabeth suffered a lacerated rib, and her shirt got torn. Sarah and Elizabeth fled to a nearby gas station, where they reported the assault to the police. The state charged Michael with first-degree burglary and domestic abuse assault. The court approved the no-contact order protecting Elizabeth. Terry packed her things and left, so Elizabeth and Sarah started living together. Michael continued to harass Sarah despite a ban. He would sit across the street, shouting insults or verbally abusing her. Additionally, Sarah received numerous incoming phone calls, but whenever she picked up, the caller would remain silent. She filed a report with the police, who worked with her phone company to set up a trap on her line to track the origin of these calls. Over a 3-week period, from June 26 to July 16, Sarah's phone records revealed Michael made 162 calls to her apartment. On July 16, 2000, 1 month after her breakup with Michael, Sarah left for work at 10:30 p.m. At the time, Elizabeth was asleep on the couch. Their dog was safely locked in the bathroom to avoid disturbing Elizabeth when Sarah returned home at 4 a.m. However, upon arriving back, Sarah was surprised to find that Elizabeth had vanished. There were no signs of forced entry or a struggle, and Elizabeth's personal documents remained intact. The dog was still locked in the bathroom. Sarah decided to go to bed. When she awoke the next morning, Elizabeth was still missing. It became clear that Elizabeth had left without taking her purse, clothes, or other essential belongings, and she did not leave behind any note or explanation. Sarah reported Elizabeth's disappearance to the police 24 hours after first discovering she was gone. Elizabeth was 22 years old when she disappeared. The police launched an investigation, and of course, Michael was their first suspect. On July 16th, the day Elizabeth disappeared, Michael started phoning the apartment around 3 p.m., logging more than a dozen calls through the evening. He last called at 10:56 p.m., that is, he stopped making calls 26 minutes after Sarah left for work and left Elizabeth alone. On July 17th, Michael was supposed to be at work. His friend Jared agreed to watch Michael's children. Jared testified he found Michael was pretty intoxicated when he arrived at his house around 5:30 a.m. Jared said Michael told him Elizabeth had stayed overnight and left around 5 a.m. Michael decided not to go to work that morning. Police called Michael the next day, July 18th, to ask if he had heard from Elizabeth. He said he had not. On July 20th, officers came to his house to let him know Elizabeth was missing. Michael said his taking a sick day from work on July 17th, the day after Elizabeth disappeared, was a coincidence. Michael also stated that due to their breakup, he hadn't been eating and had been getting cramps. Elizabeth seemed to disappear into thin air. She didn't contact her family or friends, her bank account was untouched, and she had not even received her salary for the last month. The investigators knew that Elizabeth could not just leave without documents and money. All the friends she could have stayed with knew nothing about her whereabouts. The police interviewed residents and distributed flyers with an image and description of Elizabeth, but none of these actions gave the desired result. In early September 2000, Larry Headland, an agent with the Iowa Department of Criminal Investigation, interviewed Michael. During the interview, Michael claimed that he and Elizabeth had a harmonious relationship and denied any allegations of abuse between them. When asked about the attack on Elizabeth on June 16, Michael admitted that it was an unusual action on his part. He explained that he had been drinking and that his emotions had taken over, leading to his inappropriate actions. Initially, Michael denied making the harassing phone calls to Sarah's apartment. However, when presented with evidence from the call records, he admitted responsibility. The agent then pointed out that the calls to Michael's apartment had stopped the night Elizabeth went missing. This caused Michael to become stressed. Michael explained that he just wanted to avoid arrest and did not want to be charged or held responsible for anything. That's why he lied about the phone calls. He objected when Larry suggested that Elizabeth was dead. After this interview, the police obtained a search warrant for Michael's home. In Michael's bedroom, the police found an unlocked safe. Inside or on top of the safe, an officer found a $2,000 gold pendant that Michael had given Elizabeth and a V-shaped diamond and emerald ring that she had received from her mother as a graduation gift. Elizabeth only removed the ring when she was showering or soaking in the tub, otherwise, it was on her finger. In police photos taken after Michael attacked Elizabeth, the ring was still on her hand. Elizabeth had not been back to Michael's house since. So how did the ring end up in Michael's safe? When the police asked for an explanation, Michael said that Elizabeth must have left it behind when she moved out. However, officer pointed out that Elizabeth was still wearing the ring in a photo taken on June 16, the day of the attack. Michael could not explain why the ring was in his bedroom. There are some suspicious points in Elizabeth's disappearance. Michael abruptly stopped contacting her on the day she disappeared, although the police only notified him 4 days later. This suggests that Michael may be hiding something. However, the police need concrete evidence to charge him. Time has passed so quickly that it is difficult to find clues. One possibility is that Elizabeth voluntarily went into hiding. But her family does not believe this. Although the case has been quiet for many years, her mother, Donna, has not lost hope that her daughter will return. Every year, she travels to Iowa, where Elizabeth used to live, to organize activities to raise awareness about her daughter's disappearance. In 2010, Donna rented a billboard with Elizabeth's picture and offered a $20,000 reward for any information about her daughter. Donna said she was concerned that something might have happened to her daughter, but she was hopeful that she would eventually be found. "Someone definitely knows what happened to my daughter, and I hope that us coming out will jog their memory," she said. 10 years after her daughter's disappearance, Donna has developed her own theories about what happened. In an interview, she said, "I think the person called her and lured her out of the apartment to meet them. Then they argued and something bad happened that night." Despite the best efforts of the police and her family, Elizabeth's fate remains a mystery. Since her disappearance in 2000, investigators have searched 79 different locations but have not found Elizabeth's body. They entered her information into the National Crime Information Center's Missing Persons database. 17 years later, in 2017, the investigation was reopened. By this time, Michael Saiperda had moved to Colorado. Police reviewed all the evidence and interviews. They discovered a key detail that had previously been overlooked. Jared, Michael's friend who was assigned to watch Michael's children on July 17, 2000, told police that when he arrived at Michael's house at 5:30 a.m., he found Michael quite drunk. According to Jared's testimony, Michael said that Elizabeth had stayed the night and left around 5 a.m. However, in previous interviews, Michael had never mentioned Elizabeth sleeping over at his house. More significantly, Elizabeth's jewelry was found in Michael's safe. Authorities decided to arrest Michael 17 years after Elizabeth went missing. Although her body was never found, investigators believe that Elizabeth was dead and that Michael was the culprit. In November 2017, Michael was arrested in Colorado and extradited to Iowa, where he was charged with first-degree murder in the death of his wife Elizabeth. Donna said, "This is the best news we've had in 17 years. "We've waited a long time and are so glad that he's finally been arrested." Michael later waived his right to a jury trial. The loss of key physical evidence, especially the victim's body, made it significantly more difficult for prosecutors to prove guilt. Without a body, forensic experts could not determine the cause of death, and the jury could not directly observe the victim's injuries or view crime scene photos. The defense argued that the prosecutor's goal was not to find the truth, but to convict Michael by looking for inconsistencies in witness testimony. Although the trial took place 18 years after the incident, the defense acknowledged during closing arguments that a body was not required to establish a homicide. However, Michael still challenged the state's evidence of Elizabeth's death. The district court concluded that the state had proven her death beyond a reasonable doubt. The court held that any theory that Elizabeth was still alive and could reappear at any time was unrealistic. The state presented evidence that Michael was the last person to speak to Elizabeth at 10:56 p.m. on July 16, which he himself admitted. The district court noted Jared's testimony that Michael told Elizabeth to stay at his house that night. In addition, there were other suspicious circumstances. Michael unexpectedly left work on July 17 and did not call Elizabeth's apartment again, even though the police did not officially report her missing until July 20. From this evidence, the state established that Michael's hatred of Elizabeth led to murder. Because Michael was controlling and possessive of Elizabeth, it was highly likely that he intentionally caused her physical harm when she decided to leave him for someone else. The strained relationship between them was clear evidence of Michael's intentional intent to cause harm. The state presented evidence that Michael had repeatedly threatened to kill Elizabeth and dispose of her body so that no one would find it. From these repeated threats, the jury could conclude that Michael had intended to kill Elizabeth. The court reviewed the evidence and made a crucial decision. They discovered that Elizabeth had opened a new bank account just 9 days before her disappearance, but had not withdrawn her last paycheck. They concluded that she was dead. After carefully evaluating all the evidence, the court found that Michael was responsible for Elizabeth's death. On June 25, 2018, Michael Cyperda, 58, was convicted of first-degree murder. On August 23, 2018, the court sentenced him to life in prison without parole and ordered him to pay $150,000 in restitution for Elizabeth's death. However, the story does not end there. In September 2020, the Iowa Court of Appeals changed Michael Cyperda's conviction from first-degree murder to second-degree murder. Judge Mary Tabor, in a 30-page ruling, noted that while there was enough evidence to conclude that Elizabeth was dead and that Michael was responsible, the prosecutor failed to prove that Michael intended to kill Elizabeth. This led to the reduced charge. The case was particularly difficult because there was no body, weapon, or crime scene. Michael asked to be released or at least given a new trial. Ultimately, the court sentenced Michael Cyperda to 50 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 30 years. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Alison Baden-Clay. Alison Baden-Clay was born on July 1, 1968 in a suburb of Brisbane. She grew up in a wealthy family and developed a love for ballet from an early age. After completing her schooling, she pursued further studies and proved herself to be an excellent student, fluent in 6 languages. In 1993, at the age of 25, Alison entered a local beauty pageant, where she impressed the audience with her ballet skills. She then began her professional career in the Human Resources Department at the Brisbane Flight Centre. Here, her career progressed rapidly after her talent was recognized by her boss. It was while working at the center that she met her future husband, Gerard. Gerard Baden-Clay was born on September 9, 1970 in Bournemouth, United Kingdom. Gerard comes from a distinguished lineage, with his great-grandfather, Robert Baden-Powell, a prominent British military leader and founder of the Scouting movement. Gerard moved to Zambia with his family when he was 1 year old, as it was the homeland of his father, Nigel Clay. They remained in Zambia for 8 years before migrating to Australia. Gerard then completed his studies in Australia, graduating with a degree in accounting. He eventually joined the Brisbane Flight Centre, where he met Alison. Gerard met Alison at the Brisbane Flight Centre, marking the beginning of their romance. They married on August 23, 1997, and then went on a trip around the world, visiting several countries including South America and Switzerland, with a temporary stay in London. When they returned to Australia, Alison returned to work at the Flight Centre, eventually being promoted to a management position. In 2002, Alison became pregnant and gave birth to her first child, a daughter named Hannah. After Hannah was born, Alison decided to focus solely on raising her children and taking care of her family. Gerard made several career changes during this time and opened a luxury real estate company in Brisbane in 2004. With the help of his parents, he invested a lot of time and effort into the business. The Gerard family had a second daughter, Sarah, born in 2004, followed by their youngest child, Ella, born in 2006. The family lived in a rented house in Brookfield, a suburb of Brisbane. Meanwhile, Alison spent most of her time looking after the girls at home. Over time, Alison began to notice that Gerard was increasingly distant from her. This eventually led to a shocking confession that he no longer loved her. Gerard's behavior towards Alison changed dramatically. He constantly criticized her, complaining about the meals she cooked and the cleanliness of the house. He called her lazy and said she was no longer attractive to him. Alison chose to remain silent in the face of these hurtful comments. In her diary, she poured out her heart, expressing her enduring love for Gerard, their frequent arguments, her feelings of guilt, and her determination to change to win his love back. Alison hid her family troubles behind a cheerful exterior, making her appear to be a warm, caring person, a devoted mother, and a loving wife. However, her family life took a difficult turn in 2011. Gerard's business suffered after the Queensland floods, resulting in a significant debt of around $1 million Australian dollars. That same year, in October, Alison discovered that Gerard was secretly having an affair with Tony McHugh, a co-worker. Gerard and Tony met in 2008 when Tony was a client, and Gerard hired her. At the time, Tony was having marital problems after 17 years of marriage, which eventually led to Tony's divorce. Tony knew Gerard was married, but Gerard said that the relationship with Alison was loveless and that he was only staying for their daughter. Gerard promised Tony a future together, and that he would marry her. In October 2011, Alison discovered that Gerard was having an affair with Tony. Gerard immediately ended the relationship and severed ties with Tony by firing her from his real estate company, and reconciled with Alison. Tony still harbored hopes for a future with Gerard. 4 months later, in April 2012, Tony and Gerard were talking on the phone while Tony was driving home. They discussed an upcoming real estate conference, and Gerard casually mentioned that Tony would be meeting Alison there the next day. This revelation upset Tony, causing her to question the promises he had made to her, and to call him dishonest. Gerard apologized to Tony, reaffirmed his love for her, and reiterated his commitment to ending his marriage to Alison within 3 months. The following morning, April 20th, at 7:14 a.m., Gerard contacted the police in a distressed state, reporting that Alison had gone missing after going for a walk around 10 p.m. the night before. When police arrived at Gerard's home, they noticed deep, curved scratches on his face, which he claimed he had sustained while shaving. Further examination revealed small red marks on his chest, which Gerard explained were from a moth bite he had encountered while changing an outdoor light. A search of the house revealed no signs of a disturbance. Everything was in order, and the bed was made. Despite his stress, Gerard appeared calm and began getting his daughters ready for school and daycare. Police interviewed Hannah, Sarah, and Ella, who reported falling asleep after their mother turned off the lights and had not seen her since. During questioning, the crying girls described their parents as a happy and generally harmonious couple. Police searched the area and spoke to neighbors, but no one witnessed anything unusual. The only initial clues found were a small bloodstain on Allison's car and a strand of her hair in the trunk. A large-scale search operation soon followed, with rescue teams and volunteers searching woods, wells, manholes, and dams near the Allison family home. To aid the search efforts, a mannequin was placed wearing an outfit similar to Allison's last known outfit to aid the search efforts. As time went on, the chances of finding Allison alive diminished. Her friends clung to hope, not wanting to think the worst. Gerard appeared visibly upset as he tearfully pleaded with his wife to return, in front of the media. Behind the scenes, however, he instructed his lover, Tony, to keep quiet and put their relationship on hold, promising to reunite in the future. 10 days after Allison went missing, a boater made a horrifying discovery on the banks of Colorado Creek, about 8 miles from the Allison family home, on April 30, 2012. The body was found in an advanced state of decomposition. The day after Allison's body was discovered, Gerard contacted his insurance company to inquire about filing an $800,000 life insurance claim on his wife. A medical examiner later formally identified the body as Allison Baden-Clay, 43, using dental records. Notably, Allison was still wearing the same clothes she had been wearing when she went missing. A post-mortem examination found that Allison's death was likely due to strangulation. Her death was therefore classified as a homicide, although determining the exact cause was difficult due to the advanced stage of decomposition of the body. On May 11, 2012, St. Paul's Cathedral in Brisbane held a funeral for Allison Baden-Clay, who had tragically passed away. Her husband, Gerard, was visibly overcome with emotion, crying throughout the service as he consoled his daughters and consoled Allison's parents. Hundreds of people attended the service. However, while Gerard was apparently mourning his wife's death, he was secretly communicating with his mistress, Tony, through public phone calls. He informed her of Allison's passing and urged her to keep their affair a secret from the police investigation. Meanwhile, the police began to question the story Gerard had given them. He claimed that Allison had gone for a walk around 10 p.m. and was gone when he woke up. However, conflicting evidence emerged. Police found that Gerard had charged his phone at 2 a.m. and was on his computer at 5 a.m., and forensic analysis showed that the marks on his cheeks were consistent with fingernail scratches. In addition, no blood was found on his razor. A biologist disputed Gerard's explanation of the caterpillar bites on his chest, stating that no caterpillars in the family's area could have caused such injuries. A separate expert examined Allison's hair and found 5 different types of leaves: eucalyptus, Chinese elm, myrtle, cat's claw vine, and herringbone fern. 2 of these, eucalyptus and Chinese elm, were found growing directly under the bridge where Allison's body was discovered. In addition, all 5 types of leaves and thorns were found in the Allison family's backyard. On June 13, 2012, a month after Allison's funeral, 41-year-old Gerard Baden-Clay was arrested and charged with his wife's murder. He maintained his innocence and claimed he would fight the charges and applied for bail, which was immediately denied due to concerns that he might flee. During the investigation, police spoke to Tony, who revealed their 4-year secret relationship to Gerard. It was also discovered that just days before Allison went missing, Gerard had sent Tony a letter promising to be with Tony on July 1st. Further complicating the case. The prosecution's theory was that Gerard had killed his wife, Allison, to collect life insurance money and pay off debts. They believed he also planned to move on with Tony McHugh. According to their theory, a fight broke out on the evening of April 19, 2012, while Gerard and Allison were watching TV after their daughters had gone to bed. During the argument, Allison allegedly scratched Gerard's cheek, leaving her fingernails to collect DNA evidence. Unfortunately, the DNA had degraded, making it impossible to determine its source. The prosecution claimed that Gerard strangled Allison, then dragged her body through the backyard, leaving her hair tangled with leaves. Gerard placed her body in the trunk of his car and drove to a nearby river, where he dumped her body under a bridge. The prosecution believed that Gerard thought the river would wash her body away, effectively covering up his crime. Gerard then allegedly returned home, charged his phone, cleaned the house, and reported Allison missing the next morning. After finding Allison's body, Gerard hired a criminal defense attorney and went to see him. During Gerard's 2014 murder trial for Allison, prosecutors were convinced that Gerard was guilty and argued that he had killed her. However, Gerard maintained that he had nothing to do with her death. He admitted that he and Allison had argued and suggested that she may have left the house late one night because she was depressed and may have taken her own life. However, Allison's family and friends rejected this idea. They were certain that Allison would never leave her daughters, as she loved them very much. Her friends had long spoken out against Gerard, describing him as arrogant, fake, and self-centered. They believed that Allison's deep love for him blinded her to these negative traits. During the trial, excerpts from Allison's diary were presented as evidence. The diary revealed how isolated she felt and how controlling Gerard was, especially after the birth of their first child. She described feeling trapped at home and detailed several instances of Gerard's controlling behavior. This included insulting her, monitoring her conversations with a baby monitor, controlling her finances, deleting relatives' contact details from her phone and blocking their calls. After Allison's death, Gerard's attempts to make an insurance claim were rejected, with the money being withheld until the trial was over. Another important testimony came from Melissa Romano, who had never met Gerard in person but had spoken to him on the phone in 2009 about a real estate deal. She testified that after the deal was finalized, Gerard called her out of the blue, suggesting, "I'm looking for someone to kill my wife." Melissa, stunned, questioned his motives, but Gerard abruptly redirected the conversation and ended the call. This testimony played a key role in the case against Gerard, which on July 15, 2014, Gerard Badenclay was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after serving 15 years. In 2015, Gerard appealed his conviction, and the court reclassified the crime to involuntary manslaughter, shortening his prison term. However, the decision sparked widespread outrage, with around 4,000 people demonstrating in support of Allison's family. In response to public sentiment, in 2016, Australia's High Court overturned the Court of Appeal's decision, reinstating the original murder conviction. As a result, Gerard will not be eligible for parole until at least 2027. During his incarceration, Gerard initially behaved like a model prisoner. However, over time, he adapted to prison life and became less restrained in his behavior, leading to an incident where he clashed with a prison guard, which resulted in a stern reprimand. Following Gerard Badenclay's trial, his former lover, Tony McHugh, moved to Bali, where she spent her time teaching and doing charity work. 4 years later, she moved to the United Arab Emirates to continue her education career. Tony now lives a private life, keeping her personal information private. She occasionally connects with friends on social media using a private account, as she fears that Gerard may try to find her after his release. In a recent public statement, Tony expressed remorse for her actions and clarified that she never intended to cause Allison any harm. Allison's daughters Hannah, Sarah, and Ella Badenclay are living with her parents. Allison's assets, including her insurance money, have been passed on to her children. After completing her university studies in 2022, Hannah has followed in her mother's footsteps by pursuing a career in dance. In memory of her sister Allison, Vanessa set up a charity to combat domestic violence and support those affected, while raising awareness of the issue. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Susan Reinert. Susan Reinert, affectionately known as Sue, was born in 1943 in the town of Ridgeway in northwestern Pennsylvania. Her father, William Gallagher, worked as a newspaper sales manager, while her mother, Jane Gallagher, was a dedicated teacher. From an early age, Susan showed a passion for learning and a strong love of literature, suggesting that she might follow in her mother's footsteps into the field of education. While studying at Grove City College, Susan met a young Air Force recruit named Kenneth Reinert. Although their meeting was simple, it had a profound impact on her life. Susan and Kenneth's relationship deepened as they both pursued higher education. After much effort and determination, Susan graduated from college with a bachelor's degree. She continued her education, earning a master's degree in English from Pennsylvania State University. In 1965, Susan and Kenneth began their new lives after graduating from Grove City College. Because Kenneth was in the military, they had to move around a lot. They started by moving to Sacramento, California, then returned to the Northeast and lived in Rome, New York. The family even lived in Puerto Rico for a while before settling permanently in the Philadelphia area in 1971. In 1974, Susan Reinert, a devoted teacher and loving mother, experienced a turning point when she and Kenneth decided to divorce. The divorce was amicable, without legal disputes. Susan then became an active single mother, focusing on building a home for her two children, Karen and Michael. With her warm and friendly personality, she was well liked by her colleagues and students at Chestnut Walled Elementary School. In addition to her teaching career, Susan was actively involved with Parents Without Partners, especially in the Valley Forge program. After her mother passed away, Susan found strength and support from this organization despite her grief. Despite many challenges, she persevered through her involvement with Parents Without Partners. Susan's story took a mysterious turn. On June 22, 1979, Susan Reinert and her two children spent their day together. That morning, her son, Michael, had been with his father, Kenneth. That evening, they had attended a father-son baseball game. However, the game ended early when Susan picked Michael up at 8:30 p.m. That evening, Susan contacted her ex-husband's parents, Florence and John Reinert. Despite their divorce, she had maintained a good relationship with them. Susan checked the gas tank and found it was nearly full, enough for the trip to Allentown, Pennsylvania, a town about an hour's drive north. The purpose of the trip was to attend a single-parent conference and spend the weekend with her children. Susan had signed up to run a workshop there and keep the children involved in activities throughout the weekend. They planned to leave on Saturday morning and return home late Sunday. At around 9 p.m. on Friday night, Karen and Michael were playing outside, picking up hailstones left over from a summer storm. About 30 minutes later, neighbors heard Susan's orange-red Plymouth Horizon start. Minutes later, the car disappeared. Susan had left the house with her two children, possibly to visit her boyfriend before going to the conference. She was in a long-term relationship with William Bradfield, a fellow teacher. Although they tried to keep it a secret, the relationship was causing tension in Susan's marriage to Kenneth. There were even rumors that Susan and William might get married. On June 22, 1979, Susan and her children set off after visiting her boyfriend. They planned to travel to Allentown, about 49 miles north, to spend the night at a motel. However, they never arrived. Susan and her children disappeared without a trace, leaving those who knew and loved them distraught. On June 25, 1979, Susan's Plymouth hatchback was discovered in the parking lot of the Host Inn in Harrisburg, 87 miles from Allentown and 97 miles from her home. Tragically, Susan's lifeless body was found in the back of the car. The details of her agonizing death were gruesome. Her body was naked, beaten, and bound with chains, curled up in the wheel well of the car. Her hands were tied, and she had black eyes. She had been beaten with chains or tied so tightly that the chains left bruises on her back. More frighteningly, she had been injected with a fatal dose of morphine. The whereabouts of her 2 children, however, were unknown. They had seemingly disappeared without a trace. Police searched for hours. But no one had seen them, nor had any of Susan's friends or relatives seen them that weekend. So, the police began investigating further. They posted pictures of the Reinert family in newspapers for weeks, looking for any clues about the children. The investigation discovered that Susan had named William Bradfield, the man she thought she was going to marry, as the beneficiary of $730,000 in life insurance policies. This raised suspicions that her children might have been murdered so he could receive the money. However, William Bradfield had a solid alibi, as he was in Cape May, New Jersey, the weekend Susan was murdered and her children went missing. Several teachers were present and confirmed his whereabouts. The police then turned their attention to Upper Merion High School, where Susan worked, as the school was experiencing problems. Principal Jay Smith was embroiled in a scandal. He had served as principal until he was fired the previous year after being arrested at a local shopping center. In his Ford Granada, police discovered loaded handguns, a balaclava, and burglary tools. More disturbingly, a syringe containing morphine was found in the trunk. Jay had been struggling before that. His wife, Stephanie Smith, was diagnosed with malignant cancer and died in August 1979, after several hospitalizations. During this time, Stephanie Smith began keeping a diary, documenting her husband's strange behavior, which became increasingly worse. Jay became involved in intimate groups and changed sexual partners, which Stephanie Smith did not approve of, and this seemed to lead to even more disturbing behavior. In September 1977, Stephanie Hunsberger, the adult daughter of the couple, moved in with her parents along with her husband, Edward Hunsberger. They settled into the Smiths' home in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania, that fall. Stephanie Smith was battling cancer, which caused turmoil in the family and seemed to increase tensions among them. Edward and Stephanie Hunsberger, Jay's daughter and son-in-law, were struggling with heroin addiction and had difficulty finding and keeping jobs before deciding to move back in with their families. Moving in with their parents was a desperate attempt to escape drugs. In early 1978, Jay Smith's daughter and son-in-law, Stephanie Hunsberger and Edward, mysteriously disappeared. They had moved in with Jay Smith and his wife just a few months earlier. They was last seen in February 1978, when they visited Edward's parents in North Wales, Pennsylvania. When they left, they promised to return soon, but then they disappeared. Their disappearance was first noticed when Edward failed to show up for a meeting with his probation officer later that month. Authorities contacted Jay Smith, the last person known to have had contact with the couple. Jay Smith told people that Edward and Stephanie Hunsberger had run away to California. He said they owed money to some drug dealers in the area and had fled to the West Coast. However, he was unable to provide any further information about the incident. Edward and Stephanie Hunsberger lived a nomadic life, so their disappearance went unnoticed for some time. Meanwhile, Jay was arrested for burglary. When police searched Jay's home, they found several suspicious items, including weapons, drugs, security uniforms, badges, and pornography. They also discovered nitric acid and office supplies stolen from a nearby school. Jay was suspected of being involved in recent armed robberies. During the burglary trial, Jay's friend William testified that they were on vacation when the robberies occurred. However, the jury did not believe this testimony. Jay had a bad reputation in Upper Merion and was known as the Prince of Darkness. Jay Smith was eventually sentenced to 2 to 5 years in prison on June 25, 1979, for a series of store robberies that took place in the late 1970s. During the investigation, Jay was arrested for burglary. Although Jay was in custody, the police still considered him a prime suspect in Susan's murder and continued to investigate his past. They made a remarkable discovery: Jay's daughter and son-in-law had also disappeared under similar circumstances as Susan and her two children. This led the police to suspect that there might be a connection between the two disappearances, Susan's death and the disappearance of her children. First, Susan had been killed by a morphine overdose, and a large amount of morphine had been discovered in Jay's home several months earlier. Second, a plastic comb with Jay's identification had been found in Susan's car. The disappearance of his daughter and son-in-law closely resembled the disappearance of Susan's children. The events that unfolded in this case were shocking and left a lasting impact on the public. However, the most shocking truth was yet to be revealed. In late July 1979, about a month after Susan's body was found near Harrisburg, investigators discovered a potential motive for the horrific murder: that was financial gain. On July 20, 1979, a Philadelphia attorney filed a motion to stay the execution of Susan's will in both Montgomery County and Delaware. The motion was filed on behalf of Kenneth Reinert, Susan's ex-husband, and Patrick Gallagher, her brother. The purpose of this legal action was to give both men an opportunity to review the contents of Susan's will before it was executed. They decided to file in both counties because Susan's residence in Ardmore, Pennsylvania, was near the county line, allowing her to file her will in both places. It was later discovered that just a few weeks before her death, Susan had made several significant changes to her will. She had also purchased several large life insurance policies, naming her current boyfriend, William, as the beneficiary. In the legal documents, she referred to him as her future husband. As the police investigated further, they determined that Susan's death occurred between midnight on Saturday, June 23, 1979, and midnight on Sunday, June 24, 1979. William and other teachers arrived in Cape Cod at 5 a.m. on Saturday and remained there until the afternoon of Monday, June 25. However, it was unclear exactly where William was during the time of Susan's disappearance, casting doubt on his alibi. The investigation also revealed that Susan had withdrawn large sums of money from her account, totaling approximately $25,000, through multiple transactions due to daily limits. She told the bank staff that she intended to invest the money in high-yield investments managed by William, whom she referred to as her future husband. What Susan did not expect was that she was just one of many women in William's life. He was secretly dating several other people, including a coworker who taught English, with whom he had maintained a secret relationship for nearly 10 years. William had promised Susan that the investments would yield large returns to finance their upcoming wedding and move to England. During the investigation, investigators found fake stocks and bonds in Susan's home, which initially puzzled them. They later discovered that William had sold these fake securities to Susan and then passed them on to her. These securities were mostly related to fictitious and worthless companies, suggesting that William had been deceiving Susan for a long time. This discovery added a new dimension to the case, further clarifying William's financial motives. In March 1980, William was called to testify in a civil lawsuit. During his first appearance, he refused to answer questions directly and referred questions to his legal counsel. Although William's attorneys denied that he had taken Susan's money, they were willing to negotiate with the state to settle the matter and handle Susan's $1 million will. By June 1980, William had officially testified in court for the first time. He denied most of the allegations related to the case, insisting that his relationship with Susan was not as serious as she had told her relatives. He also denied any plans to marry Susan later that year, contrary to what Susan had shared with her close friends. William made unsubstantiated allegations about Susan's relationship with Jay Smith, the former principal of Upper Marion High School, although there was no evidence to support these claims. On the contrary, Many of Susan's relatives and friends confirmed her long-term relationship with William. It should be noted that Jay Smith was in prison during the trial. William did not explain why Susan chose him as the heir to her $1 million-plus estate. Instead, he described Susan as unreliable and troubled. William also blamed Susan for her problems and claimed that he was only helping to solve her problems, especially in the civil lawsuit over the missing $25,000. In June 1980, Susan's brother and ex-husband filed a separate lawsuit. They wanted to recover the entire $450,000 insurance policy that Susan had received a few weeks before her death. The intention was to put the money in a trust fund to conduct their own investigation. The case was complicated and full of unexpected events. On February 20, 1981, William was arrested by the police on 3 charges, 2 counts of theft and 1 count of conspiracy. He was accused of keeping $25,000 that Susan had given him to invest. William was released on bail on February 23, 1981, but his criminal trial was scheduled to begin the following month. Before the criminal trial began, the civil case was closed. It was decided that $36,000 from Susan's estate would be used to further investigate the children's clothing and settle a dispute over the remainder of her will. This prevented William from receiving any money on August 3, 1981. William's criminal trial lasted 5 days and ended with a guilty verdict on the theft charge. Delaware County District Attorney Edward Weiss then asked that William's bail be increased from $25,000 to $75,000. The reason was that they believed this sentence increased the risk of William fleeing, especially since there was a possibility that he would be charged with murder. Judge Robert A. Wright granted this request. On April 6, 1983, William was arrested by the Pennsylvania State Police on several felony charges, including 3 counts of murder, attempted murder, kidnapping, conspiracy to kidnap, and obstruction of justice. The jury concluded that William knew about the plan to kill Susan and her children and was involved in the crimes. Although Jay Smith was believed to be involved, he was not charged at the time. Part of the indictment was based on the testimony of Proctor Noel, a fellow inmate, who stated that during a game of chess, William confessed to his involvement in the murders. The arrest of William Bradfield in April 1983 was a major step in the investigation of the case. Although there was no physical evidence linking William to Susan Reinert's death or the disappearance of her children, prosecutors were confident in the case. William's previous burglary convictions and his connection to the suspected body dumping led to more serious charges in the 1980s. Jay Smith, who was serving time for other crimes, was forced to testify before a grand jury despite invoking his Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. William Bradfield was also called to testify in 1984, but details of his testimony have not been released. The hearing was reportedly related to the disappearances of Stephanie Hunsberger and Edward Hunsberger, Jay's daughter and son-in-law. In April 1985, Jay was asked to provide handwriting samples to compare with old documents that might be related to the plan to kill Susan Reinert. This investigation led to Jay's arrest on June 25, 1985, exactly 6 years after Susan Reinert's body was found. Jay was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder and held in custody while awaiting trial. In 1984, Joseph Wambaugh, a well-known crime author, published a book about the case. The book supported the theory that Jay was the killer. A television movie based on the book was later produced, bringing the case to national attention. Jay maintained his innocence throughout his imprisonment. He appealed and accused William Bradfield of framing him. In 1989, the court reviewed the case and found problems with the indictment, leading to a new trial in 1990. Jay waived his right to a speedy trial to allow for a more thorough investigation. In 1992, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruled in Jay's favor, overturning the murder conviction and finding the prosecution guilty. For the next 2 decades, the state did not retry the case, allowing Jay to live out his life in freedom. William Bradfield continued to evade liability and refused to pay the $25,000 owed to Susan Reinert's estate. The case dragged on until 1996. Jay sued the state and Joseph Wambaugh for defamation and conspiracy, but both lawsuits were dismissed. On January 16, 1998, William Bradfield, after more than 10 years in prison, was found unconscious in his cell and died of cardiac arrest. Susan's ex-husband, Kenneth Reinert, died in June 2002 without knowing the fate of his two missing children. Jay Smith, who was exonerated in 1992, wrote a book about his case and remarried in 2002. He died on May 12, 2009. However, the 1978 disappearance of his daughter and son-in-law, Stephanie Hunsberger and Edward Hunsberger, remains unsolved to this day. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Lori Slasinski. Lori Slasinski was born on September 21, 1981, to her parents, Casey and Arlene Slasinski. With her blue eyes and blonde hair, Lori was cherished by her family, including her older brother, Paul. The Slasinski family originally hailed from New York State but moved to the rural Alabama farmland near Auburn when Lori was 13 years old. Growing up in the countryside, Lori developed a strong love for animals. Her friends described her as beautiful, and she enjoyed spending time with them, watching movies, riding her bicycle, and playing video games. Alongside her enjoyment of life, she was quite dedicated to her studies, and her family did their best to support her. After graduating from high school, Lori decided to attend Auburn University, where she chose to major in psychology and minor in criminology. To help her transition to college life, her parents purchased a mobile home for her to live in off-campus, situated in a well-kept trailer park popular among students. She lived there with her cherished dog, Peanut, a Yorkshire Terrier. Lori maintained a strong relationship with her family, with her mother calling her every day to see how she was doing. In 2005, she graduated with honors from Auburn University. Shortly after, she started working at the East Alabama Mental Health Center while continuing to live in a trailer park. She also planned to pursue a master's degree in psychology in the near future. Lori's family was proud of her accomplishments, unaware of the trouble that was on the horizon. On June 10, 2006, 24-year-old Lori planned a girls' night at her best friend Lindsay Braun's house. They intended to have drinks and watch a movie. Lori met Lindsay in their junior year at Auburn University, and they quickly became friends due to Lori's sweet and outgoing personality. Their friendship strengthened further when they both started working at the same mental health facility after graduation. Around 6:30 p.m. on June 10th, Lori called Lindsay to say she was stopping at the store before heading to her house for movie night. Unfortunately, she never arrived. Lindsay became concerned when she didn't hear from Lori that night or the next day. She called Lori multiple times and left messages on her answering machine but received no response. When Lori failed to show up for work on Monday, June 12, Lindsay became very worried. It was unusual for Lori to miss work without notifying anyone. After Lori missed work again on Tuesday, June 13, Lindsay and another coworker decided to check on her at home. When they arrived at Lori's trailer, Lindsay noticed that Lori was not there. The door was unlocked and the air conditioning was running, which was unexpected. Inside, Lindsay saw that Lori's dog, Peanut, was in his crate. He appeared healthy and content, suggesting that someone had been taking care of him. Remarkably, his crate was clean, despite Lori being missing for several days. Lindsay sensed something was wrong, as it was unusual for Lori to leave her pet unattended. She recalled that Lori had placed 3 rugs on her kitchen floor because the dog wouldn't walk on the tile. However, those rugs were now missing, as well as the outside trash can. Later that day, June 13th, 2006, Lori's mother, Arlene, received a call from her workplace about Lori missing work for 2 consecutive days. Arlene tried calling Lori but couldn't reach her. Concerned for her daughter's safety, Arlene hurried to Auburn after informing her husband, Casey, about Lori's disappearance. When she arrived, Arlene entered Lori's trailer and noticed something was off. The door was slightly open, and Lori's bed was neatly made, but Lori was nowhere to be found. Her car was also missing. Upon further inspection, Arlene saw that several items were missing: Lori's kitchen rugs, a pillow from her couch, a Galileo thermometer, a green trash can that Lori used for her rake and shovel, and the phone cord for her landline. A sense of alarm started to rise in Arlene as she understood that something terrible had happened. She officially reported her daughter missing, but still holding out hope that she would return. The police began their investigation and searched Lori's trailer home. While they didn't find any clear evidence pointing to a suspect, they did see signs of a struggle and scuff marks on the wall. On the bed sheet, they discovered semen and found traces of blood on the doorknob. A coat hanger and a single golden hoop earring were also collected from the scene. On June 10, 2006, police obtained surveillance footage showing Lori at an Alabama Walmart, marking the last confirmed sighting of her. After this, no one knew what had happened to her. Later that afternoon, Arlene received a phone call from one of Lori's friends, a 25-year-old named Daryl Richard Ennis, commonly known as Rick. He claimed he had seen Lori on the day she went missing and suggested that she might have gone off to make a drug deal. Lori had met Daryl at the bowling alley where he worked and often spent time there while she was a student. Arlene recognized Daryl because Lori had invited him to celebrate Christmas with their family in 2005, feeling sorry for him since he had no family of his own. However, Arlene found it hard to believe Daryl's story. Despite Lori's friendship with him, she was convinced her daughter would never be involved in drug dealing. Arlene suspected that Daryl was lying but had no idea why he would make such a claim. Daryl provided the police with information about Lori's disappearance, but before they could act on it, a shocking discovery occurred. On June 14, 2006, just 4 days after Lori went missing, her car was discovered fully engulfed in flames near the bowling alley where Daryl had previously worked. This shifted the investigation from a missing persons case to a potential homicide. Investigators noted that the fire destroyed any evidence that might have been in the car, but Lori was not inside when it burned. Nearby, a hand-rolled cigarette was found on the ground, along with a gas can located in the woods. This incident deeply distressed Lori's family, leading them to believe that something terrible had happened to her. The only lead they had at the time was the information provided to Arlene. When Daryl was questioned, he repeated the same story he had told Arlene but added more details. He stated that he and Lori had grown marijuana together and suggested that she might have gone off to sell her portion of it. He also mentioned that Lori could have been involved with some dangerous people. The police searched Lori's trailer, but despite a thorough investigation, they found no evidence of her dealing drugs. During the interview, investigators noticed several scratches on Daryl's hands and arms, which he said were from his dog. Investigators uncovered troubling information from Lori's friend, Lindsay. During their last phone conversation on the day Lori disappeared, Lindsay heard Daryl speaking in the background. Since Daryl was a friend of Lori's, Lindsay didn't think much of it at the time. When Lindsay texted him to ask about Lori's whereabouts, he replied that Lori was fine when he left her. Lindsay also told investigators that before Lori went missing, she had mentioned that he had written her a love letter, but she did not feel the same way. Lori had expressed to Lindsay that she was not romantically interested in Daryl and intended to discuss this with him. Investigators later learned that Daryl had informed his friends about his letter and Lori's rejection. When police re-interviewed him to confront him with new information from Lindsay, he admitted to meeting her just hours before Lori disappeared. He maintained that Lori was in good spirits and was getting ready to go to the store when he left her house. However, detectives identified several inconsistencies in his story, which led them to consider Daryl their main suspect. Their suspicion intensified after searching his car, where they found several significant items, including a knife, cleaning supplies, and handcuffs. Investigators started digging into Daryl's past to find more evidence, but they were unprepared for the shocking discoveries. They uncovered that Daryl, at just 12 years old, had murdered his mother and stepfather. On March 3, 1993, only 10 months after their marriage, Daryl killed his mother, a well-liked churchgoer, by first shooting her in the face and then beating her to death with a baseball bat in their trailer in North Montgomery, Alabama. His stepfather, Eddie Joe Flowers, suffered the same fate when Daryl shot him in the face with a shotgun upon his return from work. After the murders, Daryl drove the family car and crashed it into a fence along the highway. Alabama State Trooper John Clark found Daryl walking on the road. When asked about his parents, Daryl admitted that he had killed them. During a search of the backpack he was carrying, Detective Clark discovered a kitchen knife and ammunition for both a 12-gauge shotgun and a .22 caliber firearm. When questioned about his motives, the emotionless 12-year-old stated that he was angry because his parents planned to move, and he didn't want to leave his school. Investigators believe that Daryl lived with his parents' bodies while still attending school. He also confessed that he intended to kill his 3 stepsisters, which shocked the investigators. Although his murders were horrific, he was too young to be tried as an adult. As a minor, he received a 9-year prison sentence for the double murder. After his release, he moved to Auburn, where he met Lori Slasinski. When Lori went missing, Daryl became the main suspect. However, despite his criminal history and the abundance of circumstantial evidence, authorities could not charge him with Lori's murder without her body or any direct evidence linking him to the crime. A few weeks after being interviewed by detectives, he left Auburn and eventually settled in Huntsville, Alabama, in 2007. By that time, Lori's case had grown cold. After moving to Huntsville, Daryl quickly moved in with a roommate named Abram. Abram noticed that Daryl had brought kitchen rugs with him, which he said were a gift from someone. Daryl also mentioned to Abram that he was in love with a woman from Auburn who had mysteriously disappeared, but he did not reveal her name. Abram thought these conversations were normal until he discovered his troubling past. This prompted him to ask Daryl to leave immediately. When Abram returned to his apartment, he found it in complete disarray. The police later recovered the rugs, and one of them tested positive for Daryl's blood. Abram also recalled seeing a Galileo thermometer in Daryl's room before he moved in, which was the same type that was missing from Lori's home. Unfortunately, the police were still unable to connect Daryl to Lori's murder, as the main suspect remained unidentified. The case stayed unresolved, leaving Lori's heartbroken family searching for answers for years. For many years, there were no developments in the case. Then, in 2016, Mark Whitaker, a special agent with the Alabama State Bureau of Investigation, established a cold case unit to re-examine Lori's disappearance. He worked with his longtime partner, Agent J.W. Barnes. Lori's case was their first focus. They revisited the evidence, sent some items to forensic labs for testing, and conducted multiple interviews. As they reviewed the evidence, Daryl became their primary suspect. Agent Mark was aware of Daryl's past and felt strongly that he had harmed Lori, but he struggled to find enough evidence or a body to prove his guilt. In an unexpected turn of events, Agent J.W. Barnes, who is Agent Mark's partner, discovered a crucial piece of evidence while reviewing old files. He found an unopened report in an envelope that had been untouched for 10 years. After Lori disappeared in 2006, the police collected evidence from her trailer, but no one followed up until the results were finally analyzed. The analysis revealed that semen found on Lori's bed sheet and blood on the inside of the front door matched the DNA of Daryl Ennis. With this evidence, investigators were able to build a strong case against him, leading to an indictment in 2018. At that time, Daryl was happily engaged to a school librarian named Elena Atkinson and was living in Pilot, Virginia, where he worked for a company that designed and built portable living structures called yurts. On August 6, 2018, which was his 38th birthday, Daryl Ennis was arrested by a U.S. Marshals task force 12 years after Lori Slasinski disappeared from Auburn. While Lori's family felt relieved, Daryl's fiancée and co-workers were taken aback by the news. He faced 2 counts of capital murder. The trail finally started on April 1, 2022. The prosecution presented evidence suggesting Daryl's involvement in the crime, including a cigarette butt found in Lori's bed sheet that contained his DNA. In response, the defense claimed that police might have taken the cigarette from Daryl's home and planted it at the scene. They also attempted to undermine Lori's character, suggesting she was a drug dealer to account for his DNA being on the bed sheet. Daryl claimed he had consensual sex with Lori before she disappeared, implying that they were still intimate despite her rejecting him. However, his account lacked credibility, especially after 2 witnesses provided shocking information. One former co-worker from Alabama, Jeremy Brooks, reported that on June 9, 2006, just 1 day before Lori's mysterious disappearance, he received a call from Daryl. He asked Jeremy if he could bring him gas and if he could keep the gas tank. Jeremy refused and recounted. He said he had run out of gas and wanted me to help him. Later, after police discovered Lori's burned car, they found a gas can that matched the description of a can missing from the bowling alley where Daryl worked. Terry Booth, a former co-worker from South Carolina, shared a disturbing experience she had with Daryl years earlier. She recalled asking him why he had moved from Auburn, to which he responded that he needed to get rid of a body. At the time, Terry believed he was joking, but Daryl's later arrest for the murder of Lori changed her perspective. Despite Daryl consistently denying the allegations and asserting his innocence, the jury reached a guilty verdict after 2 days of deliberation. He was initially facing the death penalty. However, the district attorney decided to remove that option after consulting with Arlene. Arlene expressed that agreeing to a life sentence without parole for Daryl would spare her from lengthy appeals while ensuring he would remain incarcerated permanently. On April 14, 2022, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole and is currently held at the William E. Donaldson Correctional Facility in Bessemer, Alabama. For Arlene, this verdict brought mixed emotions. With tears in her eyes, she expressed that it forced her to confront the painful reality that Lori would never return home, a hope she had clung to in her heart. In reflecting on Lori Slasinski's tragic story, it's impossible to ignore the heart-wrenching details that unfolded throughout her case. From her vibrant personality and promising future to the chilling revelations of Daryl Ennis's past, every twist and turn serves as a reminder of the fragility of life. The love between Lori and her family, especially her mother Arlene, paints a poignant picture of loss and longing for closure. The perseverance of investigators and the eventual breakthrough in the cold case remind us that justice, though sometimes delayed, can still prevail. As we honor Lori's memory, we recognize the profound impact her life and disappearance have had on all who knew her, as well as the vital importance of safeguarding our communities from those with dark histories. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Daniel Wozniak. Costa Mesa, California, is located between Los Angeles and San Diego on a coastal plateau overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Despite being an affluent area, it still retains the laid-back atmosphere of a beach town. No one expected this picturesque location to be the site of Julie Kibushi's tragic fate. Sam Har's parents, Stephen and Raquel, were worried when they realized they hadn't heard from him in a while. Sam was scheduled to visit them that weekend, but he never arrived. On May 22, 2010, his parents Stephen and Raquel went to Sam's apartment. When they arrived, they witnessed a horrifying scene. Stephen, in a panic, quickly called 911. During the call, he informed the police that there was a dead woman lying face down in his son's bedroom, her clothes partially torn and blood dripping from her forehead. "Do you know where your son is?" the dispatcher asked. "No, I don't," came the reply. But there was no sign of Sam anywhere. The case shocked the Costa Mesa community, where homicides are extremely rare. When police arrived at the apartment, they found no evidence of a struggle. The apartment was neat and showed no signs of a struggle. The space contained typical bachelor items like empty beer bottles, used cigarettes, and an outdoor grill, all of which were relatively clean and tidy. Until they entered the bedroom. In the bedroom, police found an unused knife on the nightstand and several books, including a fighting manual and another titled The Wonders of Sex. The most alarming discovery, however, was on the bed. It was covered in the victim's blood. The dead woman was lying partly on the bed and partly on the floor, her pants down, exposing her lower body. Police believe she may have been sexually assaulted before her death. She died of 2 gunshot wounds to the head, 1 to the top of her head. Although there was a knife on the nightstand, it did not appear to have been used. Curiously, she was wearing a crown, and the back of her sweater read, "All yours." Her purse was in the kitchen, and her driver's license identified the victim as 23-year-old Julie Kabushi. Julie was born on Valentine's Day 1987 to Japanese-American parents Jun and Masa Kabushi. She was the third of their 4 children. Her parents often called her "my Valentine girl." From an early age, Julie developed a strong interest in dance and music. Her mother said that Julie started tap dancing at the age of 5, and her passion for the sport continued to grow over the years. According to her friends and family, she was a very cheerful person. Her cheerful and bubbly personality brought laughter to everyone. She radiated positivity and often helped her friends when they were in trouble. While respecting her Japanese heritage, she also pursued a free-spirited, all-American lifestyle. After graduating from the Orange County School of the Arts, Julie pursued fashion design at Orange Coast Community College. There, she formed a close relationship with 26-year-old Sam Har and even tutored him in anthropology. Little did she know that her kindness would eventually lead to her tragic fate. As the police investigated the crime scene, they attempted to discover what happened to this energetic young woman, Julie. The evidence clearly pointed to Sam as her killer. Since she was found in his apartment and he was now missing, the police needed to dig deeper into Sam Har's life. Sam Har was born on May 29, 1983, in Los Angeles, California, to Stephen and Raquel Kalberman. As an only child, he received a lot of affection from his parents. His father was a special education teacher while his mother stayed home. Sam had a close relationship with his parents and visited them often. Sam was large and athletic, and friends described him as a big teddy bear. As a child, he enlisted in the United States Army, serving a tour of duty in both Afghanistan and Germany with the 173rd Airborne Division. After 3 years of service, he was discharged and returned to Southern California to take advantage of the GI Bill and finish college. Sam aimed to finish college and then re-enlist in the Army as an officer. Sam enrolled in Orange Coast Community College there. He became friends with Julie, who was 3 years younger than him. However, after 3 years in the Army, Sam developed PTSD, a common condition among veterans. Police wondered if he had lost control and committed the crime in a moment of intense emotion. When Julie was found dead in Sam's apartment and he was missing, detectives suspected that he had fled the scene after the murder. The situation became more suspicious when they discovered text messages on Julie's phone from Sam. At around 2:45 p.m. on May 21, 2010, Sam texted Julie to say he was going to help a friend and then come to his parents' house. However, just 2 hours later, his text messages changed. He contacted her multiple times, begging her to come over. The urgency in his messages made it clear that something was wrong. Concerned about her friend, Julie agreed to visit him, expressing her willingness to support him as family. Sam's messages showed that he had planned her visit. Furthermore, Sam's car and passport were missing from the apartment, leading the police to suspect that he was trying to evade arrest. With both his passport and car missing, it seemed that Sam would soon be identified as the killer. However, the police would soon discover that the situation was more complicated than it appeared. Back in 2002, when Sam was 18, he was charged with the murder along with 17 others in the stabbing and beating death of 19-year-old Byron Benito in Canyon Country. On January 15, 2002, Sam, who had known Byron since childhood, picked him up and took him to a location behind a mobile home park where a group of suspected gang members attacked and killed Byron. Although Sam was charged with murder, he was eventually acquitted, but this did not ease the police's suspicions of him. Sam's family believes in his innocence, but the police believe they are after the right suspect. Since Sam is trained in the use of firearms, he will be armed. Fearing that they are dealing with a dangerous criminal, the police issue a warrant for Sam's arrest. Meanwhile, Costa Mesa police begin monitoring Sam's cell phone and credit card transactions to find him. They learn that he has made 4 ATM withdrawals since his disappearance. Additionally, his credit card was used at a pizza delivery restaurant in Long Beach, California, just 20 miles from Sam's home. The police hoped to find Sam on surveillance footage, but when the bank provided the ATM recording, they were shocked to see a teenager in a hoodie and baseball cap withdrawing money from Sam's bank account. Neither the police nor Sam's parents were able to identify the teenager. Police believe he may be helping Sam escape or hide. Costa Mesa police are eager to find him. On May 26, 2010, police learned that Sam's credit card had been used at another pizza delivery service and began tracking the delivery driver. After obtaining the delivery address, they rushed to the location, thinking they had finally found Sam's hideout. However, when police raided the home, they did not find Sam, but instead found 17-year-old Wesley Freelich and several of his friends. Despite being suspected, police immediately ruled Wesley out as a suspect, but he still had Sam's credit card on him. Wesley shared a surprising story that police did not expect. He revealed that he had received a credit card with instructions to withdraw cash, but that the card was not given to him by Sam, and he said Daniel Wozniak, a local stage actor Wesley met through community theater, had given him a credit card. Daniel claimed to be a bail bondsman who needed to collect money that Sam owed. While most people might have refused, Wesley saw Daniel as a brother and, not realizing the severity of the situation, agreed to help. In total, $1,900 was withdrawn from the account. Daniel Wozniak's name came to the attention of the police when they discovered an invitation to Daniel's upcoming wedding in Sam's apartment. But who is Daniel really, and what is his relationship to Sam? Did he help Sam escape, or was he involved in the murder? Many questions remain unanswered. Daniel Wozniak, born March 23, 1984, is the youngest of 3 brothers. Because his parents worked long hours, he spent a lot of time with his grandparents after school. Growing up in a wealthy family, Daniel and his family often went on lavish vacations. He was considered a good student at school, getting top grades most of the time. He used pranks, singing, dancing, and magic tricks to attract people's attention. He loved being the center of attention. Realizing that he had a talent for performing on stage, Daniel began acting and singing in musicals in his early 20s. He was quite open-minded about his plans for the future, but was never able to hold down a job for long, forcing him to move from job to job with very low pay. However, he kept his passion for acting and continued to participate in theater. It was in one of these musicals that he met his dream partner, an actress. After a short period of dating, they decided to marry on May 26, 2010. The police found Daniel while he was celebrating his bachelor party in Huntington Beach, California. He was related to Sam Hart because they lived in the same apartment complex. The police suspected that Daniel may have helped Sam escape or hide, or that he was involved in Julie's murder. With an arrest warrant in hand, the police interrupted Daniel's bachelor party. His expression changed when he saw the police, and they took him into custody for questioning. In the interrogation room, Wozniak initially claimed that his only crime was participating in credit card fraud and covering up for Sam. He explained to the police that he and Sam had planned to drain his bank account with Wesley's help and then claimed that he had stolen the credit cards. However, Daniel claimed that before they could carry out their plan, Sam made a shocking confession. He added that after this confession, he dropped Sam off at a local shopping mall and had not seen him since. However, the police believed that he was still covering for Sam and that he had more to do with Julie's murder than he had told them. The police changed their approach by taking a DNA sample from Daniel, which made him appear nervous. As he tried to remain calm, the police sensed that something was wrong. Almost immediately, he began adding more details to his statement. The police asked, "Can you explain what happened to Sam?" Daniel replied, "I told him I needed to move some objects in the theater. I said, 'Lift this up,' and as he bent down, I grabbed the gun. I had never fired a gun before, so I pulled the trigger and shot him." The police realized that Daniel is worried that his DNA might be found at Sam's apartment, despite his attempts to downplay the issue. Under pressure, he continually changes his story. After a brief silence, Daniel says that he knows about Julie's murder and that he helped Sam escape. When the police remind him that they have his DNA, he insists that it does not match anything on Julie's body, insisting that he had nothing to do with the murder. The police expect him to share more information, but he abruptly decides to end the interview. Knowing the seriousness of the situation, the police press him for more information, warning that he will be arrested for accessory to murder if he does not come clean and give them full details. Daniel also has a lot at stake. He has a wedding scheduled in just 48 hours and he does not want to miss it. Under pressure, he began to collapse, causing the situation to change. The police, noticing his distress, rushed into questioning by falsely claiming that they had found his DNA on Julie's body. In reality, it took weeks for the DNA test results to come back, but Daniel did not dispute this claim. Instead, he explained that his DNA was present because he had been right above her. When his fabrications were exposed, he made a startling confession. This alarmed the police because initially only one gunshot wound was found at the crime scene. It was only after an autopsy that a second gunshot wound was discovered. Daniel's confession meant that he had been present when she was killed, making him an accomplice to the murder, allowing the police to formally arrest him. Even though Daniel was in custody, the police still needed to locate Sam, and Daniel remained silent as they searched for clues about Sam. While in prison, Daniel called his fiancée, Rachel Buffett. When Rachel chose freedom over love, she told him that she would speak to the police about the case. Daniel knew that he had to talk to the police before Rachel did. Suddenly, he panicked, desperate to reach a deal with the police that he had refused to do just hours before. But what he told the police this time was beyond their imagination. The story begins on May 21, 2010, when Daniel asks Sam to help him with a task, moving some boxes in the attic of a theater at a local military base. While Sam is busy moving the boxes and his back is turned, Daniel suddenly pulls out a gun and shoots Sam in the head. At first, Sam doesn't know what happened, but when he realizes he's been shot, he begs Daniel for help. Without hesitation, Daniel loads the gun and shoots Sam a second time, killing him on the spot. After killing Sam, Daniel proceeds to send Julie messages from Sam's phone, inviting her to Sam's apartment. Without any remorse, he leaves Sam's body in the attic and spends the night laughing, singing, and dancing, as if he hadn't just taken an innocent life. That night, Daniel returns to the apartment, and when Julie arrives, he shoots her twice in the head. He then staged the crime scene to make it appear as if Sam had attacked and killed Julie before fleeing. Daniel was also determined to hide Sam's body. In a desperate and gruesome act, he returned to the loft and cut off Sam's hands and head to conceal his identity. He dumped the body in a nearby park. Despite these horrific actions, Daniel returned to the theater as if nothing had happened. Police later found photos from the film's parties showing him laughing and joking with other members of the crew. The motive for these shocking murders was even more disturbing. It was all about money. Daniel had been struggling financially for a long time and was facing eviction, having been 2 months behind on his rent. He also had no way to pay for the lavish wedding honeymoon he had planned. When Daniel discovers that Sam has $62,000 in savings from his time in the military, he makes the cold-blooded decision to kill 2 innocent people to fund his lavish wedding and vacation. When the police discover the backpack containing the evidence Rachel mentioned to Daniel, it becomes clear just how damaging its contents can be. Daniel's brother, Tim, was told to get rid of the backpack but instead threw it over the fence at their parents' house. The backpack contained a number of incriminating items, including Sam's financial information, passport, bloody clothing, and most importantly, the murder weapon. Daniel's DNA was found on these items, placing him solely responsible for the murders of Julie and Sam. The evidence was overwhelming, including DNA, spent shell casings, and the victim's financial records, everything the prosecutor could possibly need, including the murder weapon itself. On December 16, 2015, after a trial that lasted just 5 days, Daniel Wozniak was convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder. On January 11, 2016, after just 1 hour of deliberation, one of the shortest death penalty trials ever, the jury recommended the death penalty for Daniel Wozniak. On September 23, 2016, the judge sentenced him to death. It seemed there was no end to the deception in this case. Years later, police discovered that Daniel's ex-fiancée, Rachel Buffett, not only knew about the murder plots, but also lied to the police. Although she denied all charges, she was arrested and charged with 3 felony counts of being an accessory after the fact, based on allegations that she had repeatedly lied to the police. On September 12, 2018, she was convicted of 2 of those charges, carrying a maximum possible sentence of 44 months. On November 8, 2018, she was sentenced to 32 months in prison and was released from prison in about 2019.